Welcome to the conversation, and the conversation in the country, unfortunately, has been hijacked by the right wing, as it often is. Talk about something called critical race theory and how apparently all of our schools, it's an epidemic in Oklahoma, apparently, are being taught this theory. And part of this dangerous theory is that that black folks might have been discriminated against in this country at some point. No, do not teach that in the schools. That can't be true. They say with a straight face. All right, we're gonna bring on an expert here to talk about it. Eric Ward is executive director of the Western States and senior fellow with the Southern Poverty Law Center. Eric, welcome.
Such a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, no problem. So Eric, just real quick, what is critical race theory, and are high schools all across the country actually teaching it?
It's not being taught in high school. It's barely being taught in law schools around the country. Critical race theory is academic discourse that largely takes place within the legal educational system in our country. It is legal scholars who are basically arguing that slavery and the legacy of slavery and the systemic racism that derives from that historic system still has an impact on law, and that simply those involved in the legal process need to be aware of that and to take that into account when making legal decisions. Not very radical, but we have to understand that the Republican Party is desperate in this moment, desperate to hold together its base and desperate to try to build some type of opposition as it leads into the midterm elections. That's really what critical race theory is. It's a QAnon version 3.0.
Yeah, their attacks against it are that certainly. So, but they have been taking action in Oklahoma on the 100th anniversary, or very close to the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa massacre, where successful African-American business people were murdered by a white mob. They decided to pass a law saying you can't teach about racism in America. A curious way to celebrate that landmark. And so now the Republicans say, no, we're not saying you can't teach racism. We just don't want you to talk about it. I know, but like, Eric, help me out. What are these bills saying? I mean, what according to these bills, what can we teach and not teach?
Yeah, according to these bills, one cannot teach critical race theory, or as the far right has framed it, one cannot teach that racism in America is an original sin. But let's be clear, this is part of a national campaign, right? I think about Christopher Rufo, who is a leading figure at the Manhattan Institute, who has been pushing this campaign since September, has spoken to other think tanks such as the Heritage Foundation and others. And in his take on public social media was simply that the purpose of attacking critical race theory was to grab the brand and then to use it as an umbrella term for any conversation on race equity in America. In short, the attack on critical race theory is an attempt to chill the national dialogue on racial equity that has been created by the Black Lives Matters protest over the last years. There has been legislation that has been passed around the country at local and national levels, but the language of the bills are less important than the goal of the legislation, which is to tell people that having discussions on systemic racism or racial discrimination is wrong. It flies in the face of nearly everyone across the political spectrum. But as I said before, it's a conspiracy. And the goal of the conspiracy, right, is to try to divide the American public, to use critical race theory, right, a very narrow discourse on race equity as a way of attempting to defund public education, right, to continue to try to other progressive and liberal forces in the United States.
So that's why we bring on experts, because you stated that in a very sophisticated way and explained the origins of it. I would explain it in a simpler way. It's dog whistles. We've had it before,
yes.
And so it was states' rights, which wasn't really about the right of a state to pass pro-marijuana laws. States' rights was a euphemism for let us discriminate against black people in the South. And then it was talk of welfare queens, and they didn't mean the bankers that took trillions of dollars from the Federal Reserve and the Treasury. They meant black folks, as always, right? Then Donald Trump put away the dog whistle and he came out with a human whistle and just started attacking minorities of all sorts. And this is somewhere between a human and a dog whistle. And to your point, Eric, it's Oklahoma always goes first, which is kind of hilarious because none of this is happening in Oklahoma, which actually proves your point perfectly. They were also one of the first states to pass anti-Sharia laws, as if they were about to get taken over by the Islamic Caliphate, right? So when you see you see that this is more not addressing an imminent threat, even if they thought it was a threat, right? But more about the propaganda that they want to put out there.
That's exactly right. I mean, what you describe is what we're seeing is just another version of the big lie. And we've seen it with QAnon. We've seen it around COVID-19. We saw it with the othering and the dehumanization of refugees and Muslims. And we saw it used against immigrant kids. You almost want to roll your eyes and to laugh it off as just another strange conspiracy by those seeking to attack democracy and the idea of an inclusive America. But in truth, we also have to understand and take this seriously, because most of these big lies have led to very real physical attacks in this country. If we're talking about COVID, if we remember in the early days of the right-wing noise machine and its use and misuse around COVID, it led to an attempted bombing of a Jewish hospital in Kansas City and the attempted bombing of elder care home in Massachusetts. We saw this around the attacks on immigrants and refugees. It led to the attempted bombing of a Jewish philanthropist by the name of George Soros and an attack on a Jewish synagogue at the Tree of Life in Pittsburgh. We should understand that this rhetoric and irresponsible behavior by elected officials always leads to an expression of violence. And that's why the rest of us have to use our voices to speak out right now and to demand that elected officials step away from what is merely a conspiracy theory. There is no threat around critical race theory. The only threat, right, are the continual attacks by right-wing extremists who have used violence to attack police officers, to attack marginalized communities, and to attack our government institutions. That's where the real threat is. This is a distraction, but one we need to pay attention to.
So Eric, their followers don't even know what critical race theory is. That's why I asked you what it was in the beginning. They have no idea. What they interpret that to mean is, are we gonna talk about how we discriminate against black folks? We don't want that in our history books. But wait a minute, Eric, aren't these the same folks saying we shouldn't take down the statues of the Confederate generals because we don't want to erase history? And here they are, literally trying to erase history.
Yes, I mean, what we are seeing is misinformation and disinformation that seeks to undercut one of the critical components of a society, which is historical memory. What we are seeing is that those who are attacking critical race theory, in order to use it as an umbrella, right? The goal is to manipulate us into believing that every uncomfortable conversation around race in America is somehow this idea of critical race theory. We should understand, though, that this is a double standard by these authoritarians, by those opposed to democracy. In one hand, they are holding up the First Amendment, but in reality, they're crushing it behind their backs. This is similar to what we saw after Brown versus the Board of Education in the 1950s. Following the end of legal segregation by court order in the United States, what we saw was the birth of something called the Citizens Councils, also known as the White Citizens Councils. This was a light version of the Klan, right, that sought to use the power of politics and policy in order to chill the civil rights advocacy that was happening in the country. This is a similar attempt to chill the conversation on race equity, one that the majority of Americans want in this country. Look, let's be clear. More white Americans today, not just by whole number, but by percentage, are more supportive of Black Lives Matters in this country, right, than were ever supportive of Martin Luther King Jr. in his lifetime. The truth is, is the majority of us want to have a conversation around race and racism so that we can move the country forward together. This is just an attempt to undermine that progress, and it's an attempt to distract. So we can't be gullible in this moment. We have to know better. And we have to understand that looking at a few exaggerations that happen around race equity are not a reason to end the conversation on race equity. It is a purpose for us to get stronger in that conversation. And attacks on critical race theory simply don't allow that to happen.
Eric, thank you for fighting for what you do, and thank you for coming on here and trying to shed some light on the reality.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Cenk Uygur is not here today, which means that I will be able to talk during the show. No,
We'll see. We'll see.
Poor Cenk, under the bus.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? Now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, Weezy. Everyone should be lucky enough to have a John Iadarola in their life.
You confused everyone.
Okay, sorry. I thought it was pretty clear.
Take a break now.
You can turn me into Dr. Manhattan as long as I get what Dr. Manhattan's packing, okay?
The liberal mom says, Mark Thompson, have you ever thought about doing one of those tapes that soothe people to sleep? Like Mark Thompson reads the phone book. I'd buy it.
If you'll buy it, I'll do it.
Emilio D'Amelio writes in, John, you are so thick. I love you. That's what he wrote.
Pork Chop Express writes in and says John Iadarola needs a new jacket.
Whoa.
Those 24-inch pythons are about to burst out of his sleeve.
Gun, baby.
You know, the two people here said that their moms were both in love with you over Beauty and the Beast.
That's an improvement. I usually get grandmothers.
Charlie Turk.
No, wait a minute, don't you dare.
Chemical castration when we return from the break.
I hope that, who they choose for the White House isn't just a borderline Klansman. That's all we gotta hope.
That's it. We will settle it.
She's cute. I didn't say that about Laura Ingraham.
Scandal at TYT. Did Anna comment on my tan yet? No, she hasn't.
You're a good bosser.
But Anna did say that I come in here today with a fresh mind. That's all I'm about. I'm about a fresh mind.
I can't with you right now. Okay?
She just can't. She can't, but nonetheless, we have to for another 3 hours. I'm back, baby. Let's rip into Republicans. See, don't miss the live show.
That's great.
Tell people, if you're a member, you get the whole live show whenever you want, because this stuff doesn't go into any of the clips.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT! The place is like 95% TYT on.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Cenk and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
All the people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think, one side seems to be winning, they seem to have a bigger army, there might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
What's happening? I'm Dr. Rashad Richey, host of Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey. Here's the bottom line. I play no games about policy, period. Too many people's lives are at stake. So here's what I do. I challenge conservative ideology that hinders the growth of this country. I make sure we place our facts in proper context, and I have no problem debating anyone on a position that I have. Progressives have the ideas to change the world, but when you really look at it, progressives have always change this world for the better. I want you to tune into my new show, Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey, right here on the TYT Network, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time. I'll see you there.
Everything that we've accomplished over the years is because of our members who've allowed us to remain independent of corporate interests and reach 20 million followers. Now is the time to bring as many people into the progressive movement as possible. We're inviting you to be the change and help bring a community-powered progressive change machine to life. Details are at tyt.com/change. If you're a member, thank you. We need you to remain so. If you're one of the thousands of viewers out there who's not a member yet, the time has come for you to join now. We need you more than ever. tyt.com/change. All right, back on the conversation on the TYT network. In Manhattan, we've got a fascinating district attorney race. They're going to be replacing Cyrus Vance, who's been around a long time. They've got Donald Trump's tax case that's coming up. let alone police reform, prosecutorial reform. It's a very interesting, very important race. And we have one of the candidates with us. Tahini Abushi is a civil rights attorney and now candidate for Manhattan District Attorney. Tahani, great to have you with us.
Great to be here. Thanks, Cenk.
No problem. All right, so you've been endorsed by Snoop Dogg, obviously, Kyrie Irving, equally obvious, Cynthia Nixon, Bernie Sanders, but most importantly, Jamal Bowman and Rashida Tlaib. So clearly you're the progressive candidate in the race. Is this race, first of all, breaking down into progressive versus conservative Democrat, as most races do?
I don't think so. I think it's for criminal justice reform. It's a question about tough on crime response versus comprehensive and actual addressing root causes of crimes. And so you'll see some people kind of maneuver across that spectrum depending on their audience. And so I always say it's not enough to just say you're progressive. You have to have that lived experience and you have to be dedicated to actual justice as opposed to catering to whatever group that you might be speaking with.
Right, now you are, again, it appears from your record and certainly your endorsements and your platform, very progressive and actually interested in reform. So, but when you talk about that reform, it is so significant that it makes me think, really, can we do this in Manhattan? Okay, so talk to me about what kind of reform you want to do, just at the basic level for prosecutors, how you prosecute cases.
So first and foremost, we have to understand that our goal has to move away from the automation of the system of just this knee-jerk, after the fact, prosecute, and instead respond. And that means addressing the root causes of crimes, making sure we have as many tools in the toolbox, restorative justice, alternatives to incarceration, but also making sure that we are addressing the racial disparities. Majority of arrests and prosecutions in Manhattan are of people of color, particularly the Black and Latino community. And so when we talk about public safety, it has to come from that perspective. And that includes police accountability. And so I started off with a comprehensive declination and alternatives to incarceration policy, which will do exactly that. It'll address the racial disparities in policing and prosecution. It'll ensure that we move away from prosecuting social inequities like substance use disorder, homelessness, and poverty, so that we actually have resources to dedicate to fighting violent crime and holding those parts accountable. While making sure that we get people the resources they need to actually rehabilitate and correct course.
How does that work, right? So let's take sex work as an example, or drug use. Now there are drugs that are still illegal, obviously, in New York, and sex work is illegal. So normally they would just be arrested and then tried and then sent to jail and go through that process. How would it work under your proposals?
So it's actually not how the process works now between sex work and recreational use of drug possession or sale. What ends up happening is these are low-level offenses. They result in pleas, oftentimes coerced. They get fines and fees attached to it, and then that's it. There's no impact on public safety. There's no measurement of rehabilitation, particularly with drug use. And this is significant because this is a public health perspective that needs a public health response. And so we should encourage drug treatment programs, counselors, and programs that can get people on their feet, as opposed to dumping hundreds of thousands of dollars for easy convictions. And same thing with sex work. There often aren't any trials. And instead, people are tagged with these criminal records, and it has allowed for some serious abuses from the NYPD Vice Unit as well, in furtherance of sex work, pursuing and criminalizing sex work. And so we are moving towards full decriminalization of sex work, not the Nordic model, but one that actually encompasses the full decriminalization. And we're also going to pull back and decline to prosecute the recreational amounts of drug possession and sale, because this is a public health issue and one that prosecuting has not made a dent on.
Well, that last part is inarguable. So I don't really know what conservatives say, including within the Democratic Party, other than, I don't know, doesn't it feel good to do some sort of punishment, even if it doesn't work? And I would answer, no, it doesn't feel good. So you've also decided that you're gonna try to hold police accountable. How would you do that?
Well, one, you have to not be afraid to do that. As a civil rights attorney, part of my work was to do exactly that, whether it was through discipline, termination, or criminal charges for their actions. We got it done. And so we have to establish the Manhattan District Attorney's Office as independent from the NYPD for officers that engage in the criminal conduct, that abuse their power. They must be held accountable. And I'm not just talking about put officers who lie on a list and make it available for the defense. I'm talking about actually prosecuting officers for engaging in perjury, planting evidence, criminal use of force, and making sure that we don't keep them on the force, because if the bad apples are the problems, then they shouldn't be on the force.
You've accused others of using police union talking points against you. So have you noticed those same police unions aggressively fighting against your candidacy? I mean, I imagine they are, but I don't know that you've actually seen it. I don't know what form it takes. That's why I ask.
No, it comes in the form of supporting other candidates and pushing out rhetoric that's based on complete fear mongering, not facts. And it's taken advantage of people's uncertainties and concerns, especially coming out of a pandemic, right? And so when we talk about wanting real public safety or accountability, it goes back to, well, the sky will fall if we don't continue to pump billions of dollars into our law enforcement agencies. And if we come up with alternatives to ensure that we can actually not only hold police accountable, but address crime, there's also a panic from the police unions. And I think that discourse has permeated all the races beyond just the Manhattan DA's race, but into our mayoral race and our city council races. And so that really is the tug of war, or one of them at least, that's going on in our races. Do we keep pumping billions of dollars between police prosecuting and incarceration and still be told that crime is rising? Or do we actually start addressing the root causes of crimes and actually start alleviating those issues? And that's what this is about. No more knee-jerk reactions, no more fear mongering, no more racist policies. Let's actually start including all communities in the conversation about public safety.
So Tahani, I see you're doing really well in the polls, and they're worried about you. Your opponent's spending tons of money. So some of that money might be coming from the police union and conservatives, et cetera. But you're also planning to take on major banks and corporations. And in Manhattan, that'll buy you a lot of enemies. So what kind of corporate malfeasance were you thinking you were going after?
All of them. I think we're way too easy on white collar crime, whether it's wage theft, Ponzi schemes, unsafe working conditions, mortgage fraud that brought our country to its knees. I think that oftentimes some might think that white collar crimes are victimless crimes, but that's absolutely not true. These big banks, these big corporations, Wall Street, have left a trail of victims that have been left to fend for themselves and fight for justice on their own. And this is why having somebody that is independent from the power structure, that is going to be fearless in the face of that power and doesn't owe anybody any favors, is going to be paramount to ensuring that accountability.
Damn straight. Okay, so I have a theory that I want to run by you, Tony, that Bernie Madoff was the only guy who went to prison for financial fraud because he made the mistake of robbing rich people. And so will you be going after people who actually rob middle class and poor people?
Absolutely. Whether it's abusive landlords, abusive employers, those who try to cut corners, those who take advantage of our workers, our immigrant community, undocumented or not. I mean, this is the voice and the perspective that I've been trying to bring to this race. And one of the reasons why I even jumped into this race is because the conversation when it comes time to the district attorney is always centered around making the safe and comfortable more safe and comfortable. And it leaves out the overwhelming majority of people who are being taken advantage of and are victims of crimes. And so, yes, I have said from day one on my campaign, we will put no badge or bank account above the law.
Okay, well, there is one famous, at least former New Yorker, that has a case in front of the Manhattan District Attorney, and that is Donald Trump. So I don't know that you're allowed to comment on it because it's a case that's pending, but Have you looked at any of the material? I mean, I've looked at it in terms of like seeing the newspaper reports on it, et cetera. Have you formed an opinion on it? Do you have a stance on it?
I think, yeah, I have the same information that's available to the public as a civilian. I'm looking forward to seeing more of that, of what's behind the investigation once I assume office. And I think for me, it's extremely important to, again, have somebody independent that doesn't have a preconceived position on this, but will not buckle under the pressure to look the other way or shut down the investigation. We'll be inheriting a lot of cases in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and we have to have that neutral system.
Thank you so much for running. We appreciate it, and thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Cenk. Have a good night.
Welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian with you guys. Lots of news for you guys. We make a lot of little ones, we make a lot of big ones. Some fun ones and some serious ones as always. Guess who we're gonna do it with? You. Okay, thank you for being here. Like and share the stream. You know, just subscribe for free. Have fun. Subscribe. It'll be great.
We have a whale of a story in our bonus episode today that you do not want to miss. I can't wait to talk about it. It's honestly almost like an old school second hour type story. It's not political. It has to do with animals and science. One of the more fascinating stories I've come across. So definitely tune in if you're a member. If you're not a member, you can become one by clicking that join button. If you're watching us on YouTube or by going to tyt.com/join.
Yeah, so that's a fun story. I like Anna's dad joke, which you'll understand in the context of the story. I might even tell you about how my daughter's discovered dad jokes. And now she's oh, it's a disaster. So, Baba, that was a dad joke. There goes all my jokes. Anyways, so we'll do that in the member section. All right, one last thing before we get started. Huge announcement later in this program. Not a big deal, but kind of a big deal. You're gonna wanna be there, literally. Well, later today, don't worry, go. You'll see.
I know, but
you'll see.
But I should know what it is ahead of time.
No, major announcement.
All right.
Major announcement.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, let's begin with a very serious story that I wish was getting more attention, but this is the kind of reporting that I think is incredibly important, and it was done by the Associated Press. So, a new Associated Press investigation has discovered that amidst all the gun violence that we've been facing in this country, the military certainly isn't making matters any better. In fact, the military in the 2000s, early 2000s, had essentially lost literally thousands of weapons and oftentimes had no idea that they had lost many of them. So the Army couldn't say how its Beretta M9 got to New York's capital in Alberta until the June of 2018 police. Until the June 2018 police foot chase, the Army didn't even realize someone had stolen the gun. Inventory records checked by investigators said the M9 was 600 miles away, safe inside Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So what's up with this 9mm Beretta M9? Like what's up with this gun? Well, it turns out it was actually connected to 4 shootings in Albany, in Albany, New York. And so this is actually a widespread problem that has basically gone unnoticed by the military. Weaponry being stolen. In some cases, it's an inside job where lower ranking soldiers will know about some vulnerabilities. And hey, the military's got a lot of weapons. They're not gonna notice. Why not steal them and sell them on the private market? Now, an Associated Press investigation has found that at least 1,900 US military firearms were lost or stolen during the 2010s, with some resurfacing in violent crimes because some armed services have suppressed the release of basic information. The Associated Press actually is underestimating just how many of these weapons have gone missing or have been stolen. Now, while the AP's focus was on firearms, and this should concern you, military explosives also were lost or stolen, including armor-piercing grenades that ended up in an Atlanta backyard. And I just want to quickly show you what the makeup of these weapons are. The Associated Press provided a graph that helps visualize what kind of weapons were stolen or have gone missing. Rifles tend to be the top weapon with 1,179 missing, 694 handguns. You have 74 machine guns, 36 grenade launchers, 34 rocket launchers, and the list goes on and on, 11 shotguns. So this is obviously a problem, and I'll outline where some of these weapons ended up and the crimes that they were used in, but also note that some of these weapons end up in Latin American countries. They end up in places where they're used for violence against civilians. And then we have these conversations about why people are fleeing violence in their own countries. We should have a discussion about how we contribute to that violence ourselves.
Yeah. Now I know the lead is all these missing weapons. They're showing up in crimes all across the country, and it's the incompetence of the military, plus a sea of guns, plus tons of violent people, and the glorification of guns in the country. But that sub-headline is a hell of a thing. That 36 grenade launchers and 34 rocket launchers. Holy cow! I mean, you saw the graph. That's 70, basically shoulder-fired missiles. Like, that's unbelievable. So they're somewhere out there. And by the way, the right wing says they have pretty much an unlimited right to arms. They believe that cop killer bullets are okay. They think that people on the terrorist watch list should be able to buy weapons. So if there are no bounds to weapons and there are no bounds to who can get them, so presumably people on the terrorist watch list in America can get their hands on a rocket, launcher or grenade launcher. And so there's no end to the madness in America. Look, I presumed some of these were stolen to sell to other countries or gangs, which is disastrous, right? But can some of them still be here, whether they were sold to gangs or not? Remember, if they're sold to gangs, the gangs are also here, right? So it's beyond disastrous. And I'm curious to see if the right wings, of course, they're not gonna defend the theft, right? But if somebody starts using grenade launchers, they might be like, hey, right to bear arms. It's arms. It's arms. I have an unlimited right. I'm an American. If there's tyranny in the government, how am I going to kill all those cops and military people? The right wing might say, without having grenade launchers.
I gotta say, in this particular story, the right wing really hasn't responded yet. So while I would love to go after the right wing, I think that there are actually other groups of people worth going after. And my main focus is really Congress and the inaction by Congress and their unwillingness to address these matters. The military had to report on missing weaponry to Congress, but the law that forced them to do that expired and Congress did nothing about it. And so that's exactly the reason why the Associated Press reached out to the military and wanted to see some documentation. They did this investigation through Freedom of Information requests, and the military was like, we don't really know. We're not really keeping tabs on all of this stuff because guess what? They don't have to. And one other thing I want to just quickly mention, I'm not making any excuses for anyone in the military who might steal these weapons and then sell it in the black market. However, I also want to just point out that it's thought that the lower ranking members of the military are the ones who are doing this. How much do they get paid again?
They get about $19,000 when they first enter the military. All the support to troops that you've ever heard, almost none of it goes to the actual troops. Almost all of it goes to defense contractors, and they're very, very wealthy executives. Those guys, of course, don't have to steal anything because they already stole from the American government.
Now, before I give you some more details on this, I want to go to this fun video from a Senate hearing where there were some questions asked about this particular issue and what needs to be done about it. So in the wake of this Associated Press investigation, Army Secretary Christine Wormuth was telling senators what she thinks needs to happen. But I actually want you to pay close attention to the framing of the question from this senator. Watch.
1,900 firearms is not exactly a small number. Apparently, a substantial number are used in crimes, have been recovered at crime scene. I would like to know whether you will commit, as the Pentagon used to do, sharing annual updates about lost or stolen firearms with Congress, whether you resume that regular reporting.
We do take these reports very seriously, and I absolutely commit to you to look into this and share what we know, and get back to you on it.
I don't mean to interrupt, and I apologize, but will you commit to reporting to Congress as was the practice?
Senator, I think what I can commit to is we can share with you everything we in the Army understand about our weapons.
And will you support a reporting requirement generally to the Department of Defense?
I think we'd be open to a reporting requirement.
So she says she's open to a reporting requirement. I just think it's fascinating that Senator Blumenthal, who is a lawmaker, is asking these tough questions and essentially passing the buck. No, you're the lawmaker. The law that required the Pentagon to report on missing weapons expired. I mean, it's not like he's a new lawmaker. He's been in office for a while. Why is this an issue now? And why are you passing the buck onto an army secretary when in reality, lawmakers need to pass laws. They need to do their job. Congress is really to blame for this issue. Now, are there security vulnerabilities within the military? Yes, clearly it's a huge problem in the Army where the majority of these weapons were stolen. Let's take a look at the next graph. It'll give you a sense of, among the armed services, the Army has lost the most weapons. It's not even close. Then you have the Navy, Marines, and others. But overwhelmingly, it's the Army, and they're not gonna go out of their way to do public accountability unless they're forced to do it. And the only way they'll be forced to do it is if lawmakers do their jobs.
Okay, I only have two quick things to say. One is actually reading a member comment. Jay Brown writes in, shows our military is so overfunded, they don't even know when a weapon goes missing. We should redirect some funds from the military to fund things like Medicare for All or $15 minimum wage. Well, that sounds like a pretty good idea rather than having it go to rocket launchers that they then lose or sell in the black market. Even Eisenhower warned us about this, the guy who helped win World War II and was a Republican president, but nobody ever listens. And it's part of the giant waste in the military. They have so much money and weapons, they almost literally don't know what to do with it. And so thank you to our members for participating in the show, as Jay Brown just did, great point. And finally, I just want to double down on what Anna said in the beginning, which is, look, we're sometimes tough on the press, including on the Associated Press, especially when they fire the wrong people for no reason because of right-wing pressure. Yeah, I mentioned that again. But here, fantastic investigative journalism. Thank you. That good journalism is possible and credit where credit is due.
Well, let's move on to our next story. And unfortunately, the pressure campaign against Representative Ilhan Omar continues. GOP lawmakers have been engaging in this pressure campaign, threatening Representative Ilhan Omar for speaking out against the possible war crimes conducted by the Israeli government toward the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. Now, the latest threats come from Representative Kevin McCarthy. Let's hear what he has to say.
I think Nancy Pelosi should remove Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee. This is an individual that has not once, but on numerous occasions, been anti-Semitic. Her own entire Congress had to rebuke her in the last one. But she's just not anti-Semitic, she's anti-American now. She's equating America to Taliban, to Hamas. She's discrediting our greatest ally in the Middle East, Israel, the only democracy. But the Democratic Party and the leader of that party, the speaker, said on her Sunday show that she did not rebuke her. She thanked her. So the Democrats believe this message?
Right.
That is what's in doubt for me. I will promise you this. If we are fortunate enough to have the majority, Omar would not be serving on foreign affairs or anybody that has an anti-Semitic, anti-American view. That is not productive and that is not right.
Now, his interpretation of Nancy Pelosi's interview was inaccurate. Wow, what a shocker. It wasn't great, by the way. I didn't agree with Nancy Pelosi's statements, which we'll get to in just a second. But I do want to remind the audience about the offensive remark that Representative Omar made, because I don't find it offensive. She said this: "We must have the same level of accountability and justice for all victims of crimes against humanity. We have seen unthinkable atrocities committed by the United States, Hamas, Israel, Afghanistan, and the Taliban. I ask Secretary Blinken where people are supposed to go for justice, because the United States does not agree with the International Criminal Court and its probe into the Israeli forces possibly doing war crimes against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip." So if the US doesn't believe in that, doesn't support that, how exactly would the Israeli government and the Israeli forces be held accountable for that? That was her question. And Cenk, Pelosi actually did rebuke her. Real quick, Politico reported that Pelosi's leadership team released a statement rebuking the remarks and then later thanking Omar for issuing a clarification. And her clarification was simple. I'm not trying to, say that Hamas is, or the Taliban is equal to the United States or Hamas is equal to the Israeli government. Although all the parties mentioned clearly have engaged in possible war crimes, and she wants to make sure that there's a fair system that looks into all of it.
Okay, so first on Kevin McCarthy, I've been trying to figure out who does he sound like? He sounds ridiculous. So I'm just gonna make a fun point first before we get to the serious stuff. And then I figured it out. It's the guy from Boardwalk Empire. So there was like a loser, like hanger on in Boardwalk, and he would talk like this.
I remember that guy.
Yeah, okay. And I was like, who talks like that? Nobody talks like that. He sounds so silly. It was like distracting. It turns out I was wrong. Kevin McCarthy talks like that.
Yeah,
that's right, exactly. That's a good one. Ilhan Omar, she's anti-American. Okay, anyway, now on to serious stuff. So first of all, the Democrats are guilty here. They needlessly threw Ilhan Omar under the bus themselves for no reason. 12 corporate Democrats got together pretending to be outraged by non-existent anti-Semitism. So, and I could prove that. Let me just ask those guys, anybody, of course the press will never ask them, but she is clearly referring to cases in front of the International Criminal Court. You guys are Democrats. Do you think that America and Israel should not be subject to the International Criminal Court as every other country is? Do you think we should be above the law when we torture people, commit war crimes, etc.? It's an easy question because you're criticizing her. You're saying, what, it's an anti-Semitic position to say that America and Israel should follow the international law on war crimes, just like Hamas and Taliban should. So we're asking you a simple question. Should we be above the law? Should we be allowed to torture? You guys, I get it, Republicans are in favor of torture and war crimes, but you guys are Democrats. Yeah, they are in favor of those things. So let's just keep it real. By the way, I have it on very good authority from a very good source inside Washington that all of this was a stunt to distract from one of the corporate Democrats' corruption scandals. And when he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, by the way, David Dayen, it's Josh Gottheimer, okay? David Dayen in the American Prospect wrote an excellent story about how he's financed by some of the financial industry, including the worst of the lenders that charge up to 300-400%. As that was going on, all of a sudden, squirrel, Ilhan Omar made a comment that is perfectly legitimate, but we're gonna pretend it's anti-Semitic. Now, what is the cost of that other than the truth and decency? The cost is it allows the Republicans to paint all Democrats as anti-American, anti-Semitic, etc. And the Democrats willingly walked into that. It's not like they were like, oh, the Republicans will probably let it go. No, they knew they were gift wrapping a present for Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump, Matt Gaetz, etc. Right? And and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And they did that because they thought rather smear the entire Democratic Party and definitely Ilhan Omar, who's probably received the most death threats. And yes, it's definitely because of her race and religion. And let's do it again. Let's double down. Let's be that monstrous just so nobody talks about our corporate donors. So that's who those corporate Democrats are. Everybody who signed that letter is abhorrent, absolutely abhorrent. So there is somebody who's guilty here, but it certainly ain't Ilhan Omar. McCarthy, look.
McCarthy's gonna McCarthy.
Exactly.
I mean, Republicans,
nobody's surprised by that.
This is politics. They're gonna do what they're expected to do as the opponents to the Democratic Party. It's just that corporate Democrats make it so easy for them. Over and over again. And so Dana Bash of CNN decided to ask Pelosi about this, about rebuking Ilhan Omar. And here's what she had to say.
Rashida Tlaib, one of her close friends, member of your caucus, tweeted the following: freedom of speech doesn't exist for Muslim women in Congress. The benefit of the doubt doesn't exist for Muslim women in Congress.
Okay,
House Democratic leadership should be ashamed.
But let me just say this. Yeah. We did not rebuke her. We thanked, acknowledged that she made a clarification. So before we go too far down a path.
Yeah, these aren't my words.
No, I understand that.
These are your caucus members' words.
No, that's a member.
Yeah.
That's a caucus.
A caucus member.
A caucus member.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get your response to that.
No, I'm not. I'm responding that the Congresswoman Omar is a valued member of our caucus. She asked her questions of the Secretary of State. Nobody criticized those about how people will be held accountable if we're not going to the International Court of Justice. That was a very legitimate question. That was not of concern. Members did become concerned when the tweet that was put out equated the United States with Taliban. And Hamas.
Rashida Tlaib is accusing you of policing women of color.
And then she clarified it, and we thanked her for clarification.
Her tweet did not equate anything, and I think her tweet rightly called out various countries and groups of people that have committed atrocities that should be investigated.
So let me go a couple steps further here. So first of all, Dana Bash asked a lot of tough questions of AOC in that same show, but credit to her, she also asked tough questions of Pelosi. So now Pelosi's answer is at a bare minimum awfully misleading. So number one, they did rebuke, and then they thanked her for the clarification afterwards. Now, I can prove to you that Nancy Pelosi has bad intent. Now, if you had someone who you were working with, you could do one of two things. You could rebuke them publicly and then ask for clarification, or you can ask for clarification ahead of time. And you could do it privately. Oh, the tweet was in reference to the ICC. Oh, in the tweet you referenced Secretary Blinken because that was who your question was referring to. Oh, well, that clarifies it. We don't have to rebuke you at all. We did something very, very simple. We just asked you, right? They chose not to ask. That includes Speaker Pelosi because they wanted to smear Ilhan Omar, not the Republicans. The Republicans are going to do it anyway. Nancy Pelosi gift wrapped that smear and handed it to Kevin McCarthy. That's actually what happened. And why did she do it? Because you got to protect the corporate donors. The donors must be protected. Payday lenders are giving one of my members tons of money. Gottheimer's, I think, raised about $7 million, if I'm not mistaken. Read David Dayen's piece in the American Prospect on it. Overall in his career, okay?
$7 million?
Yeah. Oh, these guys are unbelievably corrupt.
From payday lenders alone?
No, financial industry.
Okay, got it.
And the payday lenders are funneling in money, et cetera, right? And then the American Prospect writes the story, and then they're like, oh my God, who should we throw under the bus? Oh, pick the Muslim, no one cares, okay?
Jesus.
And so that's what Nancy Pelosi did, that's what she is. Almost everyone in mainstream media kisses her ass 24/7, and they will almost stoop to nothing to cover for her. But that's why I'm giving Dana Bash credit. Those are tough, good questions. Always, guys, hold them accountable, but then give credit where credit is due. So, but they don't have a very large majority at all in the House, and Democratic leadership is horrible at politics. So it's very possible that they'll lose the House in 2022. And then the Republicans are gonna kick Ilhan Omar off of the Foreign Affairs Committee, so that one of the things that'll do is then you'll silence any voice of opposition against Israeli policy and American war crimes. And one last thing I'll go further on is, who are we kidding? Israel and America do war crimes.
Yeah.
So when you say, oh, how dare you compare that to Hamas's war crimes? What do you mean? They're both war crimes. There, I just dared it. And so that doesn't mean that Hamas is great guys or Taliban's great. Of course not. Taliban's monstrous to women, to non-Muslims, you name it, right? And we're not saying everything is equal. I'm not saying everything, apple pie is as bad as Taliban. Okay, baseball, well, it's arguable. Okay, but, right? But are our war crimes just as bad as their war crimes? Well, it depends. What's the war crime? And in some instances, absolutely. And by the way, when Israel kills 10 times as many civilians, or America and Iraq kills hundreds of thousands of civilians, yes, our war crimes are just as bad and sometimes worse. Oh my God, he says something that's true. Let's all pretend to get offended. You can't argue with the facts of what I'm saying. And so we killed hundreds of thousands of civilians. Then we turn around and go, oh, can you believe a child died there? Let's go bomb people, etc. How many children did we kill in Iraq? Oh no, you're not allowed to say that because that would show the ugly side of America. Well, is it untrue? No, it's 100% true.
Yep. I mean, Obama murdered a US citizen with a drone strike. No due process, no nothing.
Yes.
I'm not saying the guy that he did a drone strike on was innocent and a lovely person, but US citizens are supposed to have their day in court. They're supposed to be given due process. That is our constitutional right. And Obama not only murdered him in a drone strike, but then murdered his teenage son, and I believe one other child of his.
The 8-year-old daughter.
Great,
By the way, guys, you heard, so Anna said something that in media is considered very harsh. And I guarantee you, any mainstream media person watching this going, how dare they say that? Are you challenging the powerful or are you comforting the powerful? Because Anwar al-Awlaki was absolutely murdered by the United States of America in an extrajudicial assassination. They did not check with any courts. They did not go to the courts. He was a US citizen. Now you can think he was a terrible guy, and I'll probably agree with you, although they never ever proved that he did a terrorist attack. They said he talked about supporting the bad guys. Okay, so, but I'm not gonna litigate that because you know who was supposed to litigate that? A court.
Yep.
But we didn't. We murdered an American citizen on purpose and said, yeah, but he's Muslim and talked bad things about us. And Eric Holder, specifically, the Attorney General for Barack Obama, said, no, judicial process, due process does not necessarily mean judicial process. That is as absurd and as terrible as anything Donald Trump has ever said. That means the executive branch can just murder American citizens if they're abroad, and maybe if they're home once you open up that door, without checking with a judge ever. So that is abysmal. Yes, Barack Obama did that. That doesn't mean that Barack Obama, every part of him is bad, that he eats his burgers the wrong way and he wears the wrong suits, and that he's not a very nice guy in other settings. I'm sure he is. But did he do that? Yes, he did. That's a fact. But the corporate media covers for corporate Democrats non-stop. And by the way, they claim that his 16-year-old son was killed accidentally in a completely different strike at a completely different time. And then they claimed that his 8-year-old daughter was also killed accidentally, all American citizens, at a completely different strike at a completely different time. 3 different members of the family killed in 3 different strikes that were spaced apart significantly. And 2 of them, one of them was just an execution with no grounds at all. And the other 2 were like, oops, so did we happen to kill his kids too? I guess so.
Collateral damage, it was collateral damage.
Remember how mad everybody was when Trump said we should kill the terrorists and their family? Obama actually did do that. So if you say to him, the best case scenario is, golly gee, what a bad stroke of luck that he happened to accidentally also kill his family members. That's not a great defense. It might have been an accident, and it might not have been Obama. It might have been the CIA who did it, and then
under Obama's watch.
Under Obama's watch, and then Obama covered for them. That is also not a great fact pattern. So we don't know who ordered the strikes and whether they were actually accidental, but we do know those 3 American citizens are all dead, and no one ever asked the judge. So that's the reality.
When we come back from the break, we'll discuss how red states have already begun prematurely cutting off recipients of unemployment insurance. We have that and more for you when we come back.
All right, back on the Young Turks. If you were looking at the graphics, they stole my thunder. Dramatic announcement. We're doing a town hall in Cleveland featuring Senator Nina Turner. The hosts are gonna be me and Killer Mike. So how's that for a badass town hall? So check that out. It's gonna be on June 26th. So will there be a live audience? Yes. Can you be part of that audience? Yes. How are you gonna get information on that? You're gonna go to tyt.com/events. And when you sign up there, as soon as basically tickets become available, we wanna make sure that people show up. I think we're thinking of charging like $3 just to make sure you're actually coming. And we'll try to donate that. But anyways, tyt.com/events. Be the first to find out about this event and all other events. And it's on the issue of economic justice. So Killer Mike and myself will be hosting and interviewing Senator Turner, who is in a race, of course, in the 11th district in Ohio, about her positions on economic justice. You could be in that town hall. You'll also be on TV. We're gonna do a live show there. Obviously, that's what the town hall is. So check it out at tyt.com/events. But just as I was about to tell you that, we just got a breaking news alert, which is amazing. It turns out Donald Trump will also be in Cleveland doing a rally on June 26th.
Jeez.
So,
is that the exciting announcement you had?
The town hall is the exciting announcement.
Oh, okay.
The Trump thing, literally, Julie texted me 30 seconds before we went to the break.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so Trump versus Nina Turner, June 26th, Cleveland. Don't miss it, okay? Trump showing up at the same time that Nina Turner's holding a town hall. It's the mistake by the lake. I'm here all day. All right, guys, I gotta go to your comments. Here we go. First, actually, let me thank all these new members that are amazing that just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. Robert Mendoza, Paul Dilsner, Photon Flash, Peter Hamby, good to see you there. By the way, you guys can also upgrade by doing that. And now everyone who joins by hitting the join button below on YouTube gets the bonus episode. Tracy Ravenhawk, Carmen Pace, May Rosa, Martin Rios. Thank you so much, guys. Michael Goldman wrote in on YouTube Super Chat. After what I saw last evening, I want to give some love and money in solidarity with everyone at TYT, especially Anna. Despite the noise on Twitter, we stand with you, never stop speaking truth to power. And guys, the noise on Twitter is very much purposeful. I'm now 100% convinced, based on patterns, that it's a troll farm. And you can see it in their comments. If you look at it closely enough, they're almost all right wingers.
It's very repetitive, like there's a lot of repetition. By the way, though, the Daily Stormer apparently has put out garbage defending Jimmy Dore, which, whatever, anyway.
It is what it is, okay. All right, much love, guys, we'll be right back. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. So I want to read two quick things. P. Jacobin wrote in on Super Chat. Anna, you rock. Cenk, you're the best. Thank you. It's just, I want to send the love back. That's why I read that one. But it mainly on Twitch, Mike the Rhino Go Wolfpack writes in, Woot, sub anniversary. I was at the protest at the Treasury way back in the day with Cenk. See, that's why I love you guys. That was such a good effort on our part. It was about Goldman Sachs returning the money that they got on a backdoor bailout from AIG, and we did a protest in front of the Treasury Department. I realize now, looking back at it, oh my God, the mainstream media couldn't wrap their heads around that if their life depended on it. It was such an intricate minutia thing, but that was so important because they basically stole $13 billion from the US government, right? And I love that you guys showed up and that you still remember that and you're still watching. That's what TYT's about.
Was that the Enough protest?
No, that was a different one. That was in LA, and we used to do Wes Clark Jr. used to come out with us. We had the Enough t-shirts. We've been through so much, and I love you guys for supporting us, and most importantly, in the things where we go try to make a difference in the world.
And we also did a protest at CNN when Obama, during the ACA debates, decided to cave to Republicans and drop the public option. Yeah. So I remember that. That was fun. We just wanted the press to just finally cover it. They weren't covering it, so that's why we did
that was actually a big protest. That went really, really well. We still have some clips from that. But one quick thing on that, it's because CNN had done a poll showing how popular the public option was.
Yep.
And then the very next day turned around and said that it was unpopular.
That's what it was.
Even though it was their own poll, it was like over 70%. And we're like, can you report on your own poll? can you please stop lying constantly about how progressives are unpopular? There are positions when your own poll indicates we're overwhelmingly popular. All right, anyways, more news.
All right. In an effort to make Americans so desperate that they have no choice but to take starvation wages at a company that abuses them, red states have decided to prematurely cut off unemployment insurance to unemployed Americans during the coronavirus pandemic. Now, these federal subsidies to kind of increase unemployment insurance for people in various states was part of Biden's coronavirus relief package. It added an additional $300 a week for each person who is unemployed, but the business community wants to pressure politicians, and the GOP is the first to bite and take the bait. And so the governors of Alaska, Iowa, Missouri, and Mississippi all voluntarily ended their state's enhanced benefits over the weekend, the first of 25 states that plan to end participation in the federal programs. Currently, by the way, the federal benefits account for an extra, as I mentioned, $300 per week, a lifeline for unemployed workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. There are nearly 3 million people receiving the enhanced benefits in the 25 states ending the program. So this will impact 3 million Americans. And I just think it's fascinating to see the difference between how progressives are responding to this and how corporate Democrats are responding to this, because Senator Sanders, Bernie Sanders, has said that federal law requires the US government to make sure workers continue to receive gig worker benefits created by the COVID Aid Relief and Economic Security Act. But President Joe Biden has given his blessing to the red state cutoffs. In fact, Press Secretary Jen Psaki, who gets a lot of praise, said this during a fairly recent press conference about the matter.
Last month, the president was pretty adamant that he did not believe that these enhanced unemployment benefits were playing a role or factoring into people's decisions not to get back into the jobs market. Today, though, he's underscoring that these benefits are simply temporary, set to expire in 90 days. So which is it, yes or no, does the president believe that these unemployment benefits are playing a role here?
Well, I think we shouldn't lose sight of some basic facts here, which is that those governors who have made the decision, as they have every right to do, to pull back on the unemployment benefits, or not accept them, I should say accurately, that hasn't even taken effect in any state across the country. So in terms of how we're evaluating the impact, we haven't even seen the impact yet. That takes effect in June.
Well, I mean, it certainly has taken an effect, is in effect now with these specific states that I mentioned, and the 25 states total that will prematurely cut unemployed workers off from this unemployment insurance. Now, what's the reality of the matter? Well, recent Department of Labor statistics and jobs numbers showed the benefits' negative impact on economic growth was marginal. Last month, in fact, the economy added more than 500,000 jobs. Still, in May, there were roughly 7.9 million fewer jobs than before the pandemic. So I think that there's also a misconception about the jobs available, right? Now, are there jobs in companies where they're having difficulty filling those positions? Yes, and you know what? We're seeing workers actually be able to exercise their rights or their power in this case and withhold their labor until they get appropriate pay for the work that they're gonna do. But even so, there's still a number of jobs that have not come back to the economy from the pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah, so Republicans did something very similar during Obamacare implementation. The federal government provided a lot of money in Medicaid benefits that could have helped people get insurance and be covered in case they got sick, and the red states turned it down. So in this case, this unemployment money is in the COVID relief bill. It's the federal money giving those states that money to help their citizens. And it is Republican politicians in those states saying, no, we do not want to help our citizens. Even though it is free money given from the federal government, it doesn't come out of our budget, I'm still gonna say no, because I actively do not want to help the citizens. Now, why would they do that? Well, the voters are all citizens, so that doesn't make much sense. I mean, are there Republicans who lost their jobs? Of course, there's 8 million less jobs now than there was in the beginning of the pandemic. There are independents, et cetera. So what's the benefit, right? What like, do they get some sort of joy out of it? Do the Republican voters like them more if they're extra mean to people? Well, a little bit. I'm sure they probably get some joy out of it. And Republican voters love people who are mean, especially to them. I don't know if it's psychological or whatever, but like, oh, you're gonna beat us up and take our money. Oh, we love it as long as you own the libs, right? So there's a little bit of that, but that's not the main driving force. The main driving force is they're donors.
Yep.
Business interests go to the politicians and go, drive them back to the mines and don't pay them unemployment that is slightly above the poverty wages we pay them. We found out a way where we could unload their healthcare costs on you guys. We could unload a whole bunch of costs on you. We could have you guys eliminate our competition, and then we could pay them wages where they are barely able to exist. We have crushed their souls perfectly. Don't come in here with the federal government giving enough unemployment where they're not thoroughly crushed and desperate. We need them in a desperate state. Drive them back to the factories and the mines by taking away anything that the government would have done decently for them.
Right.
And that's what Republicans are. Look, guys, it doesn't matter. All the propaganda doesn't matter. These are facts. They took the checks away for no reason at all, other than the one I just, if you think there's a better reason or a different reason, have at it, Hoss. But the Republicans screwed you, and they always screw you. Why? It's the donors, follow the money. It's the easiest thing in the world.
Okay, but I also wanna make sure that we address the fact that what Republican lawmakers are doing right now, what the Republican Party in general is doing right now, in their nonstop crying on behalf of the US Chamber of Commerce, which hasn't stopped crying since the beginning of the pandemic, every time you hear anything about actually helping ordinary Americans. It's a target, right? I mean, when you think about it, what they're doing is actually pretty unpopular. When they put that in practice, I guarantee you that conservative voters, Republican voters are not gonna appreciate it, because whether you're a Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. This type of behavior by our government impacts you, right? So what Biden could do and what Democrats could do is, instead of immediately folding and accepting that they're likely to lose in the midterm elections, go on the offense. They're giving you something to target them on, but instead you have Jen Psaki who's like, Republican governors have every right to crush their workers. We're in favor of that. Great press secretary activity there.
Yeah, 100%, guys. Look, I know everybody's in camps. Some camps say Democrats can do nothing wrong. Other camps say Democrats do everything wrong, but Republicans are angels. These camps are nonsense, okay? All that matters is facts, reality, and truth. And so in this case, Anna is indisputably right. You saw it with your own eyes. She's not a Republican press secretary. That's not Sarah Huckabee Sanders. That's a Democratic press secretary saying, basically thanking the Republican governors. Oh, you're destroying the help that we gave the American people. That, by the way, not only is a good thing from a decency and morality perspective, but it's also great politics. Oh, thank you for destroying that. And bravo, you have every right to crush your own citizens, and we applaud you while you're doing that. You're supposed to fight them. They're on the other side, and they're destroying your bill that you bragged about. Nah, they're all on this. Look, the corporate Democrats and the corporate Republicans, this part is true. They are on the same team. So yes, they have a nice kabuki theater about disagreeing on social issues. And yes, those social issues are important. They're not unimportant. I don't want the racists to win, right? I don't want people who hate gay people, don't want them to have any rights to win, right? But the core of government is about the money. And when it comes to the money, they all agree. Their donors should have all of it, and their voters should have none of it. And so if you hear anything from the mainstream media like that, just dive 1 millimeter in, and you'll see that all of their excuses are nonsense. Why are the Democrats helping the Republican governors destroy their own COVID relief bill? The only thing they've passed, and it might be the only thing they'll ever pass.
We got to take a break. When we come back, Democrats have already assumed defeat in the midterm elections, which is kind of disastrous given what Mitch McConnell just had to say about the Supreme Court. They're panicking about it. We'll tell you what the panic is when we return.
back on the social break here. So as I told you last break, June 26th, sign up now, tyt.com/events to get news about it. Killer Mike and me are doing a town hall, co-hosting a town hall of Nina Turner in Cleveland. It turns out Trump's gonna be in town holding a rally on the same day. Let's see if I have time to go, and God knows what could happen. So I'll see you in Cleveland. We're now finally getting past COVID, and we're back doing events in person. We'd love to see you guys there. Okay, by the way, love to see you guys. We're trying to give you guys a show. So if you would like a show on Twitch with TYT, we're crazy. We open it up to everybody, okay? I mean, that's how we got someone as crazy as John Iadarola. So all the way back in the day. By the way, person who found him, Anna Kasparian. So tyt.com/Twitch pitch, and you'll get all the details there. You just got to make a quick video if you're interested in hosting a TYT show on Twitch. Check that out. All right, I got to go to YouTube here. Tyrone at home, thank you for signing up. You can hit the join button below. Do the same thing. Makes a big difference. Now, wonderful super chats here. Cyborg Manifesto wrote in, I was moved by Cenk's support of his colleague and friend Anna last night and inspired by Anna's handling of nasty sexist attacks. Props to you. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. Both, the support in every way. Yes. And Ted Cruz Wedgie Dragon, funny enough, writes in, watched a bonus episode last night, nothing but hugs and hearts to TYT, no wedgies, the reference to their handle. Been watching for about 7 years and love you guys, giving a little extra. Thank you, you guys are amazing. Peter Hamby writes in, this army, referring to our first story, is out of sorts and it's nothing to Fort brag about.
Okay. Well, who are you, Jake?
I know.
Jake's doppelganger?
Hold. That's why Peter started writing that. Then he says, also, if Anna's making these jokes, wouldn't they be mama ha-has, not dad jokes as the ones Cenk and I make? Hashtag just a thought.
Oh my God. Is mama ha-has a thing?
No, but it doesn't sound that great.
No, I like it. I like it. Also, I learned over the weekend what the Sunday scaries are. Maybe we'll talk about it in the bonus episode.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. Bernie's effing mittens writes in, you would think the GQP would be happy to mention Obama's drone strikes. Isn't that amazing? When there is something legitimate to criticize Democratic presidents that they hate about, like Obama doing extrajudicial killings, they never mention it. You know why? Because they also like extrajudicial killings. And whenever they give out money to their corporate donors, the Republicans never mention that, even though their voters hate corruption, despise it, because the Republicans do the same thing. And that's how this game is played. But TRT Wolfpack Justice Dem writes in, my family's been brainwashed by the mainstream media and believe the only reason why the Dems fail is because of the mean Republicans. I've shown them evidence, including TYT clips, but they refuse to believe. Advice. Wow, that's a long one, brother. So we don't have enough time here, but get them to watch more of this show and other progressive shows, as long as they're actually progressive. We'll be back. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also, Christy Biddleston, Meta Studio, just joined, and so did DJ Intoxic and Mario King. All just hit that join button below on YouTube. We do this show together, and we're going to bring positive change in the world together. Casper.
The Democratic Party is panicking over Senator Mitch McConnell's statements about the possibility of blocking another Democratic Supreme Court nominee, this time in the Biden administration. Let's hear what he has to say.
I think in the middle of a presidential election, if you have a Senate of the opposite party of the president, you have to go back to the 1880s to find the last time a vacancy was filled. So I think it's highly unlikely. In fact, no, I don't think either party, if it were different from the president, would confirm a Supreme Court nominee in the middle of an election. What was different in 2020 was we were of the same party as the president.
So clearly he's arguing there that Trump was a Republican president. The Senate was controlled by Republicans, and so he had the ability to nominate someone like Amy Coney Barrett in the final hour, and we were able to confirm that nominee. But he makes it clear here that if it's close to the 2024 election and Republicans take control of the Senate, then they in fact will block a Supreme Court nominee coming from Biden should something happen to a member of the Supreme Court, a Supreme Court justice, right? So now there's all this pressure for Justice Stephen Breyer to retire. And so let me give you those details. McConnell's remarks sparked immediate backlash from progressives, prompting new calls to expand the Supreme Court and for 82-year-old Justice Breyer to retire while Democrats control the Senate. But why are you guys already assuming you're gonna lose the Senate? Go ahead.
Yeah, all right, so there's two parts of this, the Republicans and then the Democrats. So on McConnell, when asked later in the interview, how about 2023? So if you guys win the Senate, might you basically block any Supreme Court nominee for 2 years? And he said, yeah, maybe, yeah, we're gonna definitely think about that. Okay, so.
Not even maybe, they will do it.
Oh, well, if he says
do it.
We're considering it, that means they're doing it, okay? So now, the Republicans confirmed a Supreme Court nominee a week before the 2020 election. Now they're saying they'll block a Democratic nominee for 2 years. Okay, 1 year for sure, and almost certainly 2 years. Now, if you're watching this, you likely know that Republicans are gigantic hypocrites. That is an unbelievably unfair standard. It's not really a standard, it's something McConnell made up. And you're so frustrated that Democrats put up with it, right? Why don't the Democrats ever fight back? Why don't we find a way to hold up their nominees? I mean, Schumer couldn't find a way to delay a nominee for 1 week, for 1 week. These guys find ways to delay people for a year or 2 years. Now, I know who controls the Senate is very important, but remember what McConnell said. He said it doesn't matter if they try to kill the filibuster. He said this a little while ago, right? There's so many procedures in the Senate that will grind it to a halt and you'll never be able to get anything done. Well, if that's true, apparently Schumer could have used those to block Amy Coney Barrett and chose not to, right? So finally, on the Republicans, and it leads back to the Democrats, because Anna's right about their weak attitude right now. But I want to also mention on another issue. So now if the Republicans are this dishonest, why are Democrats spending all their time trying to get a bipartisan agreement on infrastructure or voting rights with a party that they know to be this dishonest?
Snaps. Everybody snaps to Cenk.
I did not see those snaps coming.
Yeah.
And you know what the answer is, like Manchin, Sinema, Mark Warner, Chris Coons, so many others going around, oh no, our Republican colleagues are wonderful. Our Republican colleagues will work with us honestly, and we will get bipartisan agreement on voting rights. They will want everybody to vote, of course. What are you doing propaganda for the Republican Party for when they're kicking your ass left and right?
Yep.
And the answer is because they're not kicking your ass, they're kicking our ass. You're not on our side. You've always been Republican, and all you care about is your goddamn donors. That's the reality.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe I'm nitpicking, and if I am, please let me know. Ed Markey's been wonderful on a number of different issues, especially climate change. But this statement of his, let me just give it to you. So he says, Mitch McConnell is already foreshadowing that he'll steal a third Supreme Court seat if he gets the chance, meaning if Republicans take over the Senate in the midterm elections. He's done it before and he'll do it again. We need to expand the Supreme Court. You guys are not gonna expand the Supreme Court. I'm tired of that debate. I'm tired of that discussion. It's nonsense, it's nonsense. If they're not willing to do what it takes to ensure that they win in the midterm elections, or at least maintain their majority in the Senate in the midterms. Why are we even having a discussion about when are we supposed to pack the courts? Is it going to be in between the infrastructure bill negotiations and the American Families Plan, which will never happen? Is that when it's supposed to happen? And I don't mean to be salty toward Ed Markey specifically, right? He's just the one who made that comment, but that's a comment that's shared by so many other Democrats. Instead of focusing on that, focus on maintaining your majority in the Senate. You guys can do it. In fact, Republicans are defending 20 seats compared to 14 for Democrats, including 4 open seats and 2 seats in states won by Biden. They're also hoping to unseat Democrats in Georgia, Arizona, and New Hampshire, all states carried by Biden. Like, they act as if losing the Senate is a given. It is guaranteed. You guys have a loser mentality if you think like that.
And it is guaranteed with that mentality. Yeah. So look, I'll give you a contrast in a second. But in terms of the comments about, oh, well, let's expand the court. One, I don't even agree with that philosophically, and I'll tell you why. Because that is a case where, like, I don't mind if we get rid of the filibuster and the Republicans gain control and they pass all the things they want. And why do I not mind that, even though they will be disastrous? It's because that's called democracy. So don't vote for them, okay? But if we pack the courts and now instead of having 9 people, there's 12 people. Well, McConnell could come in and go, all right, now there's 25. And so, and they're all Republicans. This is gonna get absurd real quick, okay? So it's number 1, it's a bad strategy. Number 2, I don't even agree with it ideologically. But number 3, the reason why they're proposing it in the first place is because they know that it's hopeless. They know that it's something to distract you, the Democrats, to distract you. Oh, we are huffing and puffing. We will pack the courts. No, you won't. And by the way, that hurts you. That's a rare Democratic position that is not popular. And so it's bad on every front. How do you, you remember who came up with it originally? Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg of the useless proposals that will never get done, but makes MSNBC viewers feel good inside, okay? And so now the reality is, what's the alternative? Okay, we always try to stay constructive here. We might be aggressive, but we're constructive. So if Nina Turner were to win, for example, by the way, anybody could do this, but it's just, I don't have a lot of confidence that the others are. They've done a great job. Now, by the way, Bernie's saying, I'm a no on infrastructure bill, okay? That's great, that's awesome, we appreciate it, credit where credit is due. Anyway, if Nina wins, my guess is she'll go in and go, oh, McConnell says he's not gonna see someone for 2 years? No problem. Then I challenge Mark Warner. He's a guy who flies under the radar, total corporate Democrat from Virginia. I challenge Mark Warner. Why are you still working with the Republicans when they say they won't seat President Biden's nominee for 2 years? Why are you working with those disingenuous liars? I'm asking Democratic Mark Warner. And you know what'll happen? Tons of headlines. And in the beginning, everyone in the media will yell at Nina. And then afterwards, they'll go, well, that is an interesting question. Why don't we go ask Mark Warner?
Right.
Okay, and that's how you win. There's a reason why you fight, because it creates public pressure, which then highlights that you are actually right and they are actually wrong. NinaTurner.com/hello.
All right, why don't we take our first hour break? When we come back for the second hour, unfortunately, Texas is at it again. Their privatized, deregulated power grid is a giant problem, not just in cold weather, but also during a heat wave. We'll give you those details and more when we return.
Well, the Young Turks, the Friday show is gonna be awesome. We're gonna help us over here. Drop it. We became the first ever daily online web television show.
No, the Constitution is the very core of America. The fact that we don't spy on American citizens, that we get a warrant, that we go to a judge, that we have a procedure, that we have due process, that is America.
On top of it, they go, why don't they just stay at their own schools? You gotta realize something. These schools suck. They want people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You ain't got no straps, you ain't got no boots.
He lit these fires in trash bins all around town out of frustration.
99th most viewed channel today on YouTube.
The Shorties Award, Best Web Host. We passed 1 billion views. Voice Award winner, News and Information Channel.
The Young Turks. Oh, another Webby.
The Young Turks.
Can I curse?
Yeah! For those of you watching on the live stream, yes, we have adopted a pet iguana that showed up at our door.
Haunted version in the dark with our silhouettes.
Now let's get to the best line of the debate. And it was definitely the one against Fox.
I told you we were coming.
When you talk about it when it becomes a problem, our lack of gun control is a problem.
Nonsense BS story is hurting that cause, and they need to wake up and recognize that they are being had by these people.
Biggest gang in America. Question is, how do we make sure that we blame the person who is dead? What kind of democracy is that?
We should never forget that the most powerful people in the world exploited the greatest tragedy in American history to go to war in a country that had a lot of oil.
Rolling thunder. That's what this show is.
Never in my life did I think I would like to see a dictator. But if there's going to be one, I want it to be Trump.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
Where's the line? We've crossed every line you can imagine.
We are a socialist country. It's socialism for the rich.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
You don't have to know the truth, just believe what they tell you.
There is no bounds to their monstrous hypocrisy. Tick-tock. I think we're gonna win the Senate in 2020. And I think we're gonna have the House, and I think we're gonna have the presidency. Tick-tock. And in 2020, we're going to clean your clock, and we're gonna run you out of town, and we're gonna have an actual democracy in this country. November of 2020 could also be potentially the greatest day of our lives. Let us whisper of a dream.
Back to back that I like.
Say hi to the camera.
I don't like this.
Back on TYT Jen and Anna with you guys. I'm just gonna read one here from YouTube Super Chat. Bernie's effing mittens wrote in, mainly on the handle I wanted to read it. Wrote in, hi Jen and Anna, thank you guys so much for all you do. It feels so good to not be lied to. Love you too. All right, Casper.
Wanted to give you an update on what's happening in the state of Texas and their privatized power grid. Texas's privatized and deregulated power grid continues to serve as a massive problem for the citizens of Texas because after it malfunctioned during a winter storm, now during a heat wave, unfortunately residents are dealing with the same thing, power outages and a system that is not efficient and is not working, and tends to be a problem when we're dealing with hotter and hotter temperatures every single year as a result of climate change. Now, Texas's main power grid struggled to keep up with the demand for electricity on Monday, prompting the operator to ask Texans to conserve power until Friday. So that's frustrating, right? They're dealing with a heat wave right now and they're being told, yeah, you know, like your AC, try to keep it at like 78 or higher.
Jesus.
The electricity, I know. I mean, I could probably handle that, but I can't imagine Cenk handling that. Can you imagine if it was 78 degrees in here right now?
Oh,
no, it's over. It's over.
Okay.
Like he's sweating through his jacket.
I'd be hangry for no. Even if I ate, I'd be hangry. I'd be like, "Argh." No. But by the way, can I imagine? Yeah, of course I can imagine it. When I was growing up in Turkey, we didn't have air conditioning, so there was a lot of sleepless nights where it was super hot, and you just could not, do anything because of the heat.
Yeah.
And now, and that was back in the 1970s in Turkey. Now Texas has gotten to a point where they're a developing country from decades ago. And so I don't know, maybe they would have been better off staying in Mexico than with these Republican governors, because they will destroy any economy, any infrastructure, and so they can't keep an energy grid going if their life depended on it. And by the way, your guys' life does depend on it.
Exactly. And look, part of the problem is if you privatize and deregulate and there's no oversight by the government, or very little oversight by the government, oftentimes what happens is they don't invest in ensuring that the power grid is up to par to withstand various weather conditions. It couldn't withstand a winter storm, couldn't withstand the summer heat. And so the Electricity Reliability Council of Texas said in a statement on Monday that a significant number of unexpected power plant outages combined with expected record use of electricity due to hot weather has resulted in tight grid conditions. Approximately 12,000 megawatts of generation were offline Monday, or enough to power 2.4 million homes on a hot summer day. And what really stood out to me about this situation was how the authorities who work on behalf of the power grid didn't really know what's going on or what's wrong. And that's what happens with government officials who don't regulate these private companies and don't have to force private industry to provide any type of public statement, any type of information about their operations. In fact, one example is this. This is unusual. For this time, or for early in the summer season, said Woody Rickerson, ERCOT Vice President of Grid Planning and Operations, in a statement. He said the grid operator could or would conduct an analysis to determine why so many units are offline. So we don't know. We don't know what's going on. I mean, we're having some issues with units offline. We don't know what happened. And for anyone who watched Governor Abbott sign legislation into law indicating that they were going to now actually regulate and ensure that the power grid is up to par, none of that has actually gone into effect yet. And so they're dealing with this rickety system that's obviously failing the people of Texas, and they're paying for it. They're literally paying for this crappy privatized, deregulated system.
I'm not kidding. I haven't heard of any energy malfunctions in Mexico. So if they can't get air conditioning in 100-degree weathers in Texas, they might think it's a good thing Trump didn't get to actually build that wall because of his incompetence, because they might be crossing the border in the other direction. So Texas is an absolute mess. And so why is it a mess? Because of the deregulation. They said, run wild, do whatever you want. Guys, what's regulation? It's laws, right? So you know what one regulation is? Don't rob other people. Another regulation is don't kill other people. So do we need regulations? Yes, of course we do. And for corporations, hey, you need to weatherize your pipes so that they don't freeze in the winter and they don't give out, unlike the first day of summer, right? But Texas absolutely refuses to do that. It says, make all the money you want, and then when we run into problems, don't worry, people in Texas will suffer and a lot of them will die, and then we'll pay for it. Okay, so that's crony capitalism, that's corruption, that's the swamp that Republicans have built in Texas. Now get a load of this. At the end of the Texas Tribune article, they explain the legislation also changes ERCOT's governing board to replace what lawmakers called industry insiders. Oh, that sounds pretty good. With appointees selected by committee comprising of selections by Governor Greg Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and House Speaker Dade Phelan. Those are the corrupt guys who built the system in the first place. Ooh, they get to pick the replacements? Wow, I can't wait for that. So meet the new boss, the same as the old boss. And finally, the last sentence is, the state likely won't require companies to make weatherization upgrades until 2022 at the earliest.
Of course.
So they're not gonna fix anything at all. They say, okay, we privatize utilities that you need to live.
To survive,
To survive. And then we do not hold them accountable. We let them maximize profit, even if it winds up killing you. And then we say, oh, we're never gonna fix it because Republican voters are too stupid to ever vote us out of office. We'll just tell them transgender people in high schools. By the way, that's what's happening.
That's all they focus on.
In Texas, they passed a law on how transgender athletes can't go on the wrong team, right? And then when asked, hey, are there any such cases in Texas? They're like, I don't know. So it's a literal non-existent problem in Texas. Meanwhile, you have a massive problem in Texas. You can't use the power in Texas. And they do nothing about it. That's Republican priorities. Own the libs, hate the others, and never ever hold corporations accountable.
And look, they will make the argument that they don't agree with transgender athletes playing on the team that they identify with or competing on the team that they identify with because they want fair competition. They want to keep people safe. They're worried about, female transgender athletes being in the same locker room as, female athletes, right? But 700 Texans died during that winter storm where your privatized, deregulated power grid went out and couldn't provide heat for people. They literally froze to death, 700.
And they didn't do anything about it.
Come on.
They said, oh, don't worry, we'll appoint new board members and we're gonna be the ones who appoint them. The same guys who brought you the problem in the first place. No, guys, look, honestly, if you're a Republican and you keep voting for these guys because you're worried about the plague of Sharia law and transgender girls and this and that, and then somebody in your family passed away because of their greed, corruption, and incompetence, that's on you. You voted for that, so enjoy. And by the way, I don't mean that for all the citizens of Texas, and I feel terrible for the non-Republicans. The Republicans, you literally voted for it, so it's on you. Hey, you gotta live with your votes. But for all the other great people in Texas, find a way to get rid of these guys. Well, look, if you ever watch The Young Turks, we don't think corporate Democrats are that great a thing, right? But by the way, they do have a tiny bit of competence and efficiency. And the Republicans will kill you for a buck. And that's what they're doing in Texas right now.
Let's do Italygate.
Yeah, that's
because
fun.
Italygate is a thing apparently now. New leaked documents indicate that Donald Trump was pressuring the Justice Department to help him overturn the results of the 2020 election. And it wasn't just Donald Trump, it was Donald Trump and his cronies, including a member of Congress. So the records obtained by the House of Representatives Oversight and Reform Committee showed a series of overtures made by Trump, then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, and an outside private attorney, Kurt Olson. So I apologize, Mark Meadows is not a member of Congress, but I remember when he was, which is why I say that. But at that time, he was the White House Chief of Staff. Now, the department under outgoing Attorney General William Barr, who by the way, left his post early on December 23rd, and his short-term replacement, Jeffrey Rosen, decided not to act on any of this, even with all the incoming pressure by Trump and his goons. The emails, by the way, showed that Meadows asked the Justice Department officials to investigate an unfounded conspiracy theory called Italygate, alleging that US electoral data was changed in Italian facilities with the knowledge of the CIA.
Of course it was. Lunatics.
No, but Mark Meadows alleged that, okay? And they're going to the Justice Department, they're like, no, but the Italygate. And Rosen at the time was like, this is insane. Let me give you more. On January 1st, Meadows sent Rosen a link to a YouTube video detailing the theory. Rosen forwarded the email to then acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donoghue, who replied, pure insanity.
That's Trump's Deputy Attorney General. Rosen is at the time the acting attorney general. By the way, before that, there were several other emails. I'll tell you that real quick. So they say, oh, you got to look into voting anomalies in Fulton County, Georgia. At that point, the courts had already looked into it. It's total nonsense. And they're like, yeah, but why don't you jump in and pretend it's real, right? So Rosen forwards it to Donahue and says in the email, can you believe this? I'm not going to respond to the message below. His own attorney general thought that Donald Trump was so unhinged that he wouldn't even return his emails. Like, the president's a lunatic, so obviously I'm not gonna return his emails. The deputy attorney general says, at least it's better than the last one, but that doesn't say much. And then they send the Italy email. That was before Italy Gate, right? Then they say the one about Italy, and then Donahue responds, pure insanity.
But why Italy?
Who knows?
But why? Like, it's just it is fascinating.
No, this drives me crazy a little bit, because there's good, well-intentioned people who are very, very smart who still are talking about Donald Trump's strategies. No, he's an absolute moron. He's an actual conspiracy theorist. So he will believe almost anything. Did he really believe that Obama wasn't born in America? Yes, he believed it. I know you think, oh no, he's using it for demagoguing, and it's, yes, sure, he does it for demagoguing, but he deeply believes it. I mean, they did a conspiracy theory on the elections that Hugo Chavez fixed the voting. Hugo Chavez died 7 years ago. Okay,
I know.
But Trump believes it, and he goes around raving to his people inside the White House to the point where his own attorney general and deputy attorney general are like, oh no. The president has lost his mind. Don't bother returning his emails. Now, guys, there's some, almost everybody on the right, some portion of the mainstream media and the fake left who say, ignore Trump. Don't talk about him, he's not relevant. Now, this guy right now is unquestionably the leader of the Republican Party. Every Republican politician is bowing down to him. And if he decides that he's gonna run and he's not in prison, will he win the Republican primary? I don't know anyone who doesn't think he would win easily, super easily, right? So that is the next Republican nominee likely in 2024. And he doesn't believe in the rule of law at all. He's not even of sound mind. He thinks Italy fixed the elections against us for no apparent reason, okay? And they were talking about, the Italians use the satellites.
Yeah.
And Mark Meadows is seriously talking about this, his chief of staff, and other technology. I don't know if they use the Jewish space lasers.
I just find it fascinating that even at this late date, like, you hear nonstop shenanigans about Russiagate and like, it's Russiagate. But like, what about Italy-gate? What about Chavez Gate? What about
Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. That's our beloved Trump. Don't talk about it. Don't talk. I'll tell you, you're Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, the leader of the Republican Party is a certifiable lunatic, and you're not supposed to talk about that?
No, it's insane. But okay, so I have a important point to make though about just look. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that William Barr, who's awful in so many different ways, and people like Rosen and the the acting members or officials within the Justice Department would be the ones to prevent what Trump clearly wanted to do. He wanted to overturn the election within the executive branch, within that disgusting, deplorable executive branch. We're somehow lucky that there were some officials who were willing to stand up to Trump and say like, no, bro, it's over. We're not doing this.
By the way, do you think he's gonna make that mistake again? If he, God forbid, he wins in 2024, do you think he's gonna hire anybody but Beavis and Butthead, probably his actual sons, to be attorney general, or Rudy Giuliani or Giuliani's son? No, he's gonna hire a bunch of goons for the most important positions in the country, and then they're gonna run roughshod, and they're gonna rob this country blind, and then they're gonna end democracy. Oh, that's hyperventilating. He just tried it. He literally just, these are not, guys, this is not speculation. This is not this or that. This is actual emails of his actual attorney general, of actual requests they got from the White House. It is indisputable. This is not a media leak. This is not fake news. There is no question about it. And it's his own Justice Department saying the president is a lunatic, ignore him, and make sure you do not follow his illegal orders. And that's the guy who leads the Republican Party.
Well, since we're on the topic, let me give you a little tease before we go to our break. When we come back from the break, a Fox News contributor makes it clear that Republicans are going to attempt to steal the 2024 election. I'll tell you who it is. I'll tell you what he believes the strategy is going to be. Looks like there's some disagreement within Fox News. So we'll have that for you and more when we return.
I do want corruption.
Back on the Young Turks. All right, first of all, shout out to our sponsor Aspiration, who's also wonderfully progressive. They just declared $25 minimum wage at their company. And what they're doing is they're giving away $500 to Aspiration account holders, 10 of them. Don't get me wrong, not everybody gets it, right? But it's a contest that they're doing. They're part of the Conscious Coalition, and those are good guy companies that actually try to make sure that we don't get climate change and the world is not destroyed, and they are shown other ways to help the world. That's Warby Parker, Reformation, Mir, Imperfect Foods, and so many others. But you're gonna get a $500 gift card to one of those places if you enter this contest and you're an Aspiration account holder. So how do you find out more? Easy, go to tyt.com/win. tyt.com/win. If you have an account, you could also enter. So make sure you're going to tyt.com/win to find out more. As I told you, Saturday, June 26th, we're going to Cleveland. We're going to hold a town hall. Killer Mike and myself are going to host it. Senator Nina Turner is the guest, and we're going to talk about economic justice. Find out more by signing up at tyt.com/events, and we will be broadcasting it live as well. Want to give a shout out to Kenneth Henderson, who just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. Now, everybody who's a member on YouTube is going to get the bonus episode. So thank you for signing up. You could also upgrade there as well. Now, let me give a shout out to a couple of people who wrote in a little bit earlier in the show on Super Chat. British 32 wrote in about the stolen weapons story that we started the show with. Hi, Cenk and Anna, great combo again, thank you. The stolen weapons is a scary issue, but you should know that professionals with a 3D can design or copy all parts of rocket grenade launchers, which can't be traced when put together and used on their targets. Enjoy the donation. Well, we appreciate the donation through Super Chat, and we appreciate the point that you're making. Look, guys, it's getting scarier and scarier. And we're gonna do a couple stories now about violence that is erupting in America on the airlines and supermarkets, etc. But now we're gonna have these out of control weapons that could just be printed out. So everybody try to stay as safe as you can. Now I'm gonna go to Franklin Sharp Slicer, and Franklin wrote in with a poem yesterday too. I'm sorry I didn't get to read the poem, Franklin, but I did give you a shout out. Anyways, tonight he writes in, take away their money, put the laziness to work now. We Republicans would work, but we don't know how. Like the gods were looking down the arena and smile upon the misery and laugh like hyenas.
Good, I live for your poems.
Okay,
I love them. I love them.
Poems, Franklin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rod Shively writes in, Anna, you have more love, respect, and journalistic integrity than, name redacted, could ever dream to attain. Love you. By the way, Rob wrote in, name redacted. Okay.
Thank you.
Bradwick 1983 writes in on Twitch, member on the site for a couple of years, but happy to also give my TYT my mom's Bezos bucks. That's funny, whether it's your mom or yourself or your dad or anyone else that has Amazon Prime, on top of membership anywhere else. If you have it, that's wonderful. Even if you don't have it, it is free for you. And you can sign up by going to tyt.com/prime, and we get the revenue from Jeff Bezos's pocket. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna, Casper.
So, there's a lot of discussion already about the 2024 election. Juan Williams, who's a contributor over at Fox News, he's one of the few on the Democratic side in that cable news network, has decided to pen an op-ed for Fox News's website to warn about the Republican Party and its strategy to steal the 2024 election. Now, I think this is fascinating. Clearly, we've discussed all the various ways in which Republican lawmakers in various red states have taken measures to suppress the votes of certain demographics that are likely to vote for Democratic candidates. Now, in this piece, he says, How to Get Away with Murder was a recent TV crime show. As of 2024, or as the 2024 race approaches, the Trump GOP's current weekly drama is titled, How to Get Away with Murdering Democracy. Now, he provides the various steps that he believes the Republican Party will take, starting with step 1, don't mention January 6th, 2021. If it comes up, say Trump's violent radicals did not stop certification of President Biden's win over Trump. It was just like a tourist visit. Next, prevent a bipartisan independent commission from looking into the violent Republican riot, which, by the way, they've already done. Republican lawmakers have blocked that effort, and Joe Manchin, a Democrat in the Senate, is still pretending to believe that Republicans could work with him in bipartisan legislation. Just wanted to add that little part in there. Then step 2, Juan Williams writes, change election laws in states with GOP majority legislatures. New laws in Georgia, for example, take power away from independent election boards and the Secretary of State to certify election results. And then finally, step 3, suppress the votes of people who are likely to back Republicans. Who are unlikely, my bad. Suppress the votes of people who are unlikely to back Republicans, young people, college educated, whites, poor people, union members, working women, blacks, Latinos, and Asians. Republicans are taking this last step nationwide by having state legislatures weaken voting rights laws. Generally, GOP-led state legislatures are curtailing early voting and limiting mail and drive-up voting. They're also eliminating or decreasing the use of drop boxes.
So this is a very, very legitimate warning, and anyone who's not taking it seriously is not understanding what's happening in this country. The Republicans are definitely beginning to put democracy in a vice grip. And so there's no question that we just did a story about how Donald Trump asked the Justice Department to intervene to basically overturn the election. He asked Mike Pence to overturn the election. They had a 2-hour conversation in the Oval Office with Mike Flynn about declaring martial law to overturn the election results. So, and Donald Trump is the undisputed leader of the Republican Party. So he's very clear that he does not care about democracy. He prefers power to democracy. Now, there's polls out showing that overwhelming majority of Republicans agree with Donald Trump's actions, of course, but now 28% saying maybe it's time to resort to violence. 28% of Republicans in the country. That's tens of millions of people, okay? And then they go and pass these laws all across the country saying, well, why don't we just not let Democrats vote? And I think there's an old Stalin quote, I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, about it doesn't really matter who votes, it matters who counts the votes. And that's exactly what the Republicans are doing now in all these different states. Meanwhile, as Rome is burning, almost quite literally, because we're the new Rome, Manchin and Sinema are fiddling. And they're playing the fiddle while they say, oh, maybe we should do a bipartisanship with these Republicans who are looking to burn down democracy.
Right.
Manchin says that they're gonna help us pass voting rights legislation.
By the way, Manchin has already said that not only is he against the For the People Act, the more robust version of election reform, he's completely against the watered down version that Joe Manchin has provided. Because he's not in favor of election reform. Are you kidding me? The Republican Party loves this system.
No, it's actually amazing because Joe Manchin says, I'm gonna get the Republicans to work with us. The leader of the Republicans, Mitch McConnell in the Senate, says, no, we're not. We're never gonna vote for that bill under any circumstance. And Joe Manchin goes, oh, sure they are. And Joe Biden goes, oh, I'm gonna let Joe Manchin work for a while to see if he can get 10 Republicans to vote against their own legislation in the states to allow everyone to vote. No, nobody's that stupid. Nobody's that stupid. So you now have your answer as to whether it's stupid or corrupt. And don't let Joe Biden hide behind Joe Manchin. Why isn't he regulating? Why hasn't he said one thing about, hey, Joe Manchin, are you nuts? You really think you're gonna get 10 Republican senators who would love to limit voting to expand voting? No, nobody's that dumb. And so Manchin and Biden are both playing dumb. And by the way, how much is the press holding Biden accountable for that? Zero.
Well, I think it's also worth mentioning that there is a Senate majority leader, right? And maybe I'm missing it. I just remember when Mitch McConnell was a Senate majority leader, and he was making headlines every single day with all of his tactics and all of his strategies and all the different ways in which he was ensuring that he was accumulating power on behalf of corporate interests and the Republican Party. What is Chuck Schumer up to?
Well, look,
is he whipping votes?
No, look, forget. Look, Chuck Schumer's historically weak. I mean, unbelievably weak. But to be fair to Chuck Schumer in this term, look, as long as people do the right thing, bygones be bygones instantly if politicians are voting on bills that are gonna make a difference in people's lives. So Chuck Schumer panicked this term, thought AOC might be running against him in New York for the Senate seat. So he became the world's biggest progressive, at least rhetorically, right?
Definitely rhetorically.
No, but by the way, he went to the left of Bernie Sanders and the Just Democrats and said, hey, the $15 minimum wage that you guys dropped for no reason at all, I'll put it in every bill so that it can pass. And none of the progressives picked it up. And they all let him slide. And he probably was shocked. He's like, oh, I guess they don't want it. So after he made that promise publicly, since no one held him accountable, he went back to being conservative and weak and doing all the things that he's doing. Because he's like, oh, probably AOC won't run and no progressive ever challenges me. So I'll just go back to doing what my donors want. That's what's happening right now. So all of this is Juan Williams is 100% right. I don't know if his dates at Fox News are numbered because that is too clear and too obvious.
Yes.
In terms of that is their actual strategy. So thank you, Juan, for speaking truth to power, even at a place that you work at. But the most important part is, are the Democrats ever going to do anything about it? And at this point, the answer appears to be no, and a resounding no.
All right, well, let's switch gears and talk about something that isn't necessarily political, but has a political, tinge to it. Violent passengers on airplanes. So, air travel is picking up. People are getting their vaccines, they're fully vaccinated, they're ready to travel, they're getting on planes, and then they're getting super rowdy when they're told that they need to wear masks. It shouldn't be surprising that this is an issue because we spent the entirety of the coronavirus pandemic with a nonsense culture war being fought in regard to whether or not Americans should be forced to wear masks. And so people who have decided to drink the GOP Kool-Aid in regard to mask wearing feel entitled to boarding a plane and just going against what that airline's policy is in wearing masks. Now, I'll give you a few examples later. Now, in this particular case that I'm about to bring up, we don't know if it's over masks, but we do know that it's another case of someone getting incredibly rowdy and dangerous on a flight. A man was arrested last week after allegedly banging on a Delta cockpit door, demanding the plane land and tussling with a flight attendant. In May, a flight attendant for Southwest Airlines had 2 teeth knocked out by a furious passenger. And by the way, these aren't isolated incidents. The Federal Aviation Administration says it had received about 2,900 reports of unruly passenger behavior since January 1st. Roughly 2,200 of those involved passengers who would not comply with the federal mandate to wear a face covering. When the FAA last released an update on May 24th, it had gotten 2,500 reports of bad behavior with about 1,900 involving masks. So masks continue to be an issue. I'm sure some of you came across footage of a passenger on a Delta flight who became unruly, who became violent, and was attempting to open the airplane's door as the flight was in air, as the aircraft was in the air. And so it was a traumatic looking situation to the point where the pilot had to make an announcement calling for help from some of the passengers. Let's take a quick look at that.
Yeah, we need to get his legs pushed to the back. I got him right here. Got him right here. We turned up. You put that those legs. Pull his legs through.
So in one of the videos that I saw of this incident, you can literally hear the pilot asking for males on the flight to come to the front to help restrain this guy. He told the passengers to put their masks on because he was about to open the door. Luckily, he wasn't actually able to do that and they were able to restrain him. But flying is gonna be probably worse than it was before the pandemic happened, right? It was already unbearable, but with all of these incidents, I feel like it's gonna be even more like militant. Like these airlines are gonna be even more militant in like restraining us and automatically assuming that we're gonna be the bad guys. And it's all because of the actual bad guys serving as problems on these flights.
So there's three different issues here, and I think they're combining for this toxic stew. And by the way, the numbers are huge. Already in May, through May, they had more incidents than they had in a decade before. So it's totally out of control. And so number one is clearly the mask issue. You're taking away my freedom. Okay. It's not how freedom works, right? You don't have the freedom to do anything you want. Could you go stark naked on the plane? No. Oh, you're taking away my freedom. Well, I guess in that little way, right? But there's normal bounds that we could do on a plane. Oh, can you bring a rocket launcher onto a plane? No. Oh, you're taking away my freedom. Yes, there are reasonable restrictions we can have, right? And so, look, some of us are frustrated about the masks after we've been vaccinated, and I know that it's stretching on, but we're in this middle ground here. It looks like they're gonna lift the mask mandates on the public transportation in early September. It's okay, I'm fully vaccinated. Sometimes when people are wearing masks outside and give you the stink eye when you're not, or whatever, when you're 28 feet away from them, it's a little annoying. Should you try to crash a plane over it? No, okay? Yeah. And look, I might not agree with all the laws, but within bounds of reason, let's try to follow them, especially if they affect actual public safety of others, potentially, right? And so, and certainly on the planes they do, because if you open that door, everybody's gonna die. So look, but there are two other factors that people aren't talking about enough. One was actually alluded to at the very end of one of the articles on this in the Washington Post. It's a sense of entitlement, because the right wing in this country have been told, no, you have unlimited rights and no one else matters. The others do not matter at all. They're wrong and you're right. You're being a patriot if you defy the laws, if you defy the feelings of others, if you defy common decency and morality, you're a patriot. That's freedom. So they are genuinely shocked when someone says, no, you're not allowed to do anything you want. They're like, why not? Don't I rule over you?
Listen.
No, you don't rule over us. You just don't. Last thing is, I keep coming back to this stat, because guys, that's an iceberg and we're all ignoring the iceberg. 28% of Republicans say they are ready to resort to violence. And so there they are, they're resorting to violence. And so it's gonna boil and boil and boil until it gets worse and worse, because it's so uncomfortable, everybody wants to divert their eyes and they don't want to deal with it. The reality is, the culture of right wing in this country is encouraging violence, and that's why you're seeing this.
It's gonna be a wild boy summer. That's what it's gonna be.
Oh,
It just is. It is. I think it's part. Yes, I think that the explanation of GOP messaging in regard to mask wearing is a huge part of this. But there's also, I just feel like everyone, I can feel it when I'm out or when I'm at a grocery store, right? Like I feel this tension, like people are, like they're pent up. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like people are almost looking for conflict or looking, like, I don't know, like they're looking to express themselves in some way. And unfortunately, in some of these cases, it comes out in a violent way or in a disruptive way.
Yeah. Well, look, if I'm gonna go a little bit further, the reality is we don't like each other anymore.
Oh, Jake, I like you.
No, seriously, on a political level and unfortunately on a social and cultural level, do Democrats really respect Trump people who say you shouldn't do vaccines, you shouldn't do masks, you should do violent revolutions if your guy doesn't win in a democracy? It doesn't matter if you lose 60 court cases in a row, facts don't matter, etc. And we don't care about you guys, and we feel entitled, and we'll even end your democracy if it's going to impinge on our power. Yeah, well, we don't like that, and we don't like you. We don't like your attitude. And how about the Republicans? Like when I say that, they get their feelings so hurt. I knew it. Democrats said mean things about us. Are you guys kidding me? The whole uniting thesis of the Republican Party isn't free trade or fair trade or regulation or deregulation. That's for the donors. For the voters, the only thing that unites them is own the libs. We hate the liberals. We hate the others. And that's that fear and hate that unites them. So is it surprising that we're now we're at the very, very beginning of this, of nonstop clashes because we actively dislike each other? It's a super uncomfortable reality, but it's definitely true.
Yeah, just try to put out positive energy. You know, I'm trying. It's really
hear
hard,
you,
but,
and look, this breaks my heart. But I'm not. That might sound like an exaggeration or something that maudlin that somebody on TV might say. But really, we're split apart as a country, and they poison the well.
Yes.
They brainwash people into thinking you are entitled to everything, and the others are taking things from you. The welfare queens and the Democrats and black people and immigrants and Muslims, they're taking your way of life. And look, Tucker Carlson every night, hate over and over again. And he puts that poison into people's minds, and they go around looking like, oh, these liberals and Democrats
make us drink Starbucks every day.
Right, that's right. I mean, he even said that, right? Guy's a lunatic. He said, oh, they're gonna make you drink Starbucks every day. So, are you surprised that the right wing hates us? And then at that point, the left wing goes, well, then screw you too. And by the way, especially if you're saying you're willing to enforce your ideology on us, whether we agree or we don't agree, and you're willing to take away our democracy and you hate this country, no deal. We don't agree. This is gonna get, I want to put positive energy in the world, and I hope it happens. And by the way, if there's any sane Republicans left, we do interviews on a show we call The Conversation. I give open forum for us to have a real back and forth. I'm ready to have a back and forth with almost any like non-insane person. In fact, I've had QAnon people on, right? I just don't want talking points from corporate robots, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. And I don't want lunatics who are gonna drive people into violence, etc., right? But we've gotta talk it out. I'm willing to talk it out. I'm willing to hash it out. But what I'm not willing to do is surrender to them. And so I wish I could tell you that things are gonna get better, but I think they're going to get significantly worse.
Well, Charlie Kirk certainly thinks things are already pretty bad. He wants to warn about pot slaves when we return.
a social break. Also Blake. These wonderful people just joined. Carol Nelson is now a Young Turk. So is Vendetta. So is Sean Upley. Oh, Sean, I remember seeing your comments. Thank you guys. We'd love it. We'd love doing this show with you guys. So in fact, let me go to YouTube Super Chat for comments. No SL33P writes in, I feel like voter suppression doesn't do it justice. It's more like Democratic vote nullification. But quite literally. So not only do they make it harder to vote, but they do voter purges. So a lot of folks will show up on election day. There's a story about, I think it was an African-American woman in her 80s in Georgia, and she'd been proudly voting. She was around during the Jim Crow era, and they took her vote away. They said, oh, your name, we purged it from the voter rolls, so you're not allowed to vote. So they do vote nullification all across the country, and the Democrats sit there like schmucks and do almost nothing about it. Kevin C says, I wonder if running as an independent would get voters to keep Republicans from getting any seats back. Nah, I wish independents had a better chance of winning these days, but we're in such stark camps now that independents have less of a chance. And in terms of taking votes away from Republicans, I really doubt it, but you never know. But we'll tell you as things get closer. So, Nonune Consequence, there's no way I'm saying that right. Anyway, they write in, we argue the Green New Deal is better. We need to stop. We need to start at the current energy system is failing. Coal, oil, they are failing. And that is certainly true, and government deregulation in Texas is failing. Now I'm gonna go to Twitch. Obi Mom Kenobi gifted 5 subs. Holy Beer Dragon gifted 5 subs. AJ Duenas and a Florida Dragon also gifted 5 subs. Both of them did. Dave Smith gifted a sub. Queen Mother Dragon wrote in 2 months sharing Bezos bucks. Best decision ever. Thank you, Queen Mother Dragon. Not right in front of my salad has been with us for 7 months. And Atomic Ann said, it's my 1-year Twitchiversary, yo. Long-time member, and I pay this sub because I love ya. Atomic Ann, we love you right back. There is no Young Turks without you guys. So thank you for making all this possible, honest reporting, and we're gonna try to bring some positive change in the world. Tell Me What to Put gave 1,234 bits as usual, and you're wonderful for doing that. And guys, Woznia is going to be on tonight, so don't miss that. Woz was on Old School with me and Ben last night. If you remember, you can watch both of those episodes anytime you want. tyt.com/join to become a member. By the way, if you become a member at the higher levels, you subsidize more $1.99 members for people who are having trouble affording it. So that's how the community is helping one another. If you go to the higher levels, you subsidize even more members. And so Woznia is on tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern on twitch.tv/TYT. So make sure you're checking that out. And don't forget to go find out more about the town hall we're doing with Nina Turner and Killer Mike at tyt.com/events. Back on TYT, I just want to read one quick comment from our member section because I loved it. We did the heat wave story in Texas. Wano wrote in, Texas has a heat wave. Has anyone checked whether Ted Cruz has fled to Canada? Nice job, Juan. Excellent job. And remember, he is from Canada. That's why he actually couldn't run for president. But since he's a Republican, they just let it go. Yeah, he's not a... He was not born an American citizen, and his parents at the time were Canadian citizens. There's no question about it. And they just let him run because there are no rules for Republicans.
Was he born on a US military base?
Nothing, nope. He says, no, my parents were American. No, they weren't. They were voting in Canadian elections. There's absolutely no question about it. They were Canadian citizens. You cannot be a US citizen and any other citizen at the same time. So
really?
Yeah, 100%. But if I ran for president, I was born in Turkey, like Ted Cruz was born in Canada, There's no way that the Democrats will allow it to happen, let alone the Republicans, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if Ted Cruz runs, everyone's like, who cares? There's no rules for Republicans.
Maybe it's because everyone knows he's going to lose. I don't know.
Nah,
Yeah, no,
that's what we thought about Trump, right?
That's true.
That's what they thought about Trump. All right, anyways, let's keep it going.
Let's talk about pot.
All right.
Charlie Kirk is still around, believe it or not. And during a recent event, he wanted to warn about something very, very serious. This is during a Turning Point USA conference in Texas, Dallas, Texas. Let's watch.
We live in an abundant society. We live in a place where you could have literally weed delivered to your front door. It's like, what? And somehow, oh, that's liberty. No, that's actually slavery.
All right, a little insulting to actual slavery. But I do want to share the perspective of someone I admire quite a bit, Matt Leck, who has a wonderful podcast called The Left Reckoning with David Griscom and is a producer over at The Majority Report. He said something that I totally agree with. Weed is slavery, amphetamines, now those are liberty.
Anna, I don't know what you might be talking about. That's really good for people, whereas weed, of course, is.
I love, that Cenk doesn't do amphetamines when he's like randomly scratching his neck. Is that what people on amphetamines do?
Yeah, that's what Charlie Kirk does. I don't know what people on amphetamines do.
Just watch any Trump speech where he's like sniffing constantly.
Oh yeah,
and has dry mouth.
Yeah.
That's a better description.
That's such a Trump thing. Okay, I'm a very stable genius, very stable. I did not take any drugs. Anyways, but by the way, what the hell is he talking about?
I don't even really know what he means. I'm guessing, I'm gonna assume, I could be wrong, but I'm gonna assume that he means if you're getting weed delivered to you, then you're a slave to the drug. I would argue that's capitalism, baby.
Yeah.
Right, that's the free market. I mean, you see it happening with every other business. Why wouldn't it happen with the marijuana dispensaries that have the option to deliver?
No, but it's like literally the opposite of slavery. It's freedom. Freedom to smoke whatever you want, to consume whatever you want.
Right.
And in terms of the delivery business, I don't know why he's picking on them. What a random thing. And if you're having Popeye's chicken sandwiches delivered to you, slavery, right?
Yeah.
What kind of insane comment is that? So, okay, now if it's the delivery, well, that's obviously the markets. So does he want to limit the market for the people who legalize marijuana? No. Does he want to get rid of ride shares? What does he want to do? What an insane thing to say. Now, finally, we get to the part where, oh, by the way, it's also deeply offensive.
Yes, no, I mean, that's really the main point, right? To say that this is like, don't compare this to slavery. It's disgusting. But no, I'm gonna go back to the lighter point real quick, because look, and maybe this is not a light point. Maybe this is just a wake-up call for anyone who looks at the Charlie Kirks of the world or even the Ben Shapiros of the world, and they were fooled into thinking that it's like a different flavor from the right-wing conservatism of like the Reagan era. No, it's not different. It's actually very similar. He's judging based on people deciding that they want to use marijuana, which is, in the grand scheme of things, when you consider alcohol, tobacco, all of the other things that are legalized, is relatively harmless. And so he's not different from the Republican dorks of yesteryear. He's the same. And so is Ben Shapiro, who dedicated an entire book to wanting to ban porn. Like, this is what they do. This is what their entire focus really is.
So they're gonna get young kids to be in favor of corporate tax cuts and deregulation.
Yeah, baby.
By telling them, don't smoke weed, it's like slavery, and don't watch porn. Good luck with that strategy. By the way, he wrote a whole book about it, but then when they gave him money to do propaganda online and he realized he needs to appeal to young people, and that was his shtick for getting money from fracking magnets and stuff, right? Meanwhile, of course, he's like, oh yeah, cancel culture. By the way, fracking is great. We don't need Green New Deal at all. Fracking is awesome.
Is this Charlie Kirk or
no,
Ben
that's
Shapiro?
Ben Shapiro.
Oh, got it.
Okay, so, but in the midst of all that, he dropped all that anti-porn stuff. Did you notice that? Like, he doesn't talk about that ever anymore.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, because no, he probably did it a couple of times, and he was like, you know how porn is terrible, and everybody's like, boo, boo. Even if so, like the right wingers, what are they doing all day? What do you think they're doing, right? So the incels that they literally can't get laid. What do you think they're doing? So, But the point though is, these are the guys in favor of freedom. Don't watch that, don't eat that, don't drink this, don't do it in that position, don't do it with that person, don't touch your body. If you're a woman for reproductive reasons, if you're a man for the other reason, okay, etc. But we're the freedom party. Really? Yeah. I think you might be misunderstanding that word.
All right, one more story for you. Donald Trump is having some difficulty getting a publisher to buy his book, which means he's not really that much of an alpha male. He's something else.
Beta! Beta male! You are beta male.
I know that sometime down the line, years and years from now, that bumper is probably gonna come back to haunt us, but it's fun, okay? Let us have a little bit of fun, guys. Let us have a little bit of fun. Now, with that said, Trump says he claims that he's received 2 offers from the most unlikely of publishers, but turned them down because he did not want to do such a deal right now. So he's trying to sell a book, and he claims that 2 of the biggest publishers are like, yo, we'll pick it up, we'll publish you. And he's like, no, I don't. This is one of the most unlikely deals. I will not take it. Obviously, he didn't reveal who these publishers were, but Politico actually did a little digging, and they reached out to the 5 top publishers. Politico reached out to the top 5 publishers and editors at the big 5 publishing houses: Penguin, Random House, Hachette Book Group, HarperCollins, Macmillan Publishers, and Simon & Schuster, to see if they had heard anything about any such deals Trump had been offered. None of the sources said they had heard about such a potential book offer, and most said they wouldn't touch a Trump project when he does start shopping a book around. You know why? Because they don't want to deal with the headache. They don't want to deal with the necessary fact checking. They don't want to deal with the backlash they might get from other authors. And so they're like, it's not worth it. Even if it makes a lot of money, we're not touching it. Let someone else deal with it. And so Cenk, have at it, have fun.
Yeah,
this is for you.
Yeah, so there's so many things here that I love. There's one other thing that I didn't expect, although it's very fitting with Donald Trump. So the parts that I knew are, you can't fact check a Donald Trump book. Everything in there is gonna be a lie. So if you then tell him to fix all the lies, he's never gonna do it, and you're gonna be in endless squabbles, right? But if you print the stuff that's a lie, well, then you're gonna have a massive brand issue, right? So now you're a publisher who's willing to print nonsense lies over and over again. But then there's a couple of things I didn't expect. One is, they say the other authors attached to the publishing houses will leave. They're like, if you're gonna print trash like that, it ruins my credibility to be with you guys. And so that costs them more money. Because don't get me wrong, the Trump book will make tons and tons of money. Every Trump fan out there, which there's tons of them, will be like, oh my God, I can't wait to see what the orange man's gonna say. I'll do everything he says. But despite that amount of money, it's not worth losing to other authors, destroying your brand, getting into a nightmare squabble with him over fact checking. And then there's a staff uprising that will almost certainly happen, and we're gonna lose half your staff because they're like, you're printing this guy's stuff, and he calls for violence so often, etc. So those are the serious parts as to why they're not doing the deals. Now let's go back to fun. So if you notice, he said with the quote that Anna read is most unlikely of publishers, and some were joking around saying, well, maybe he got an offer from Zimbabwe. That would be unlikely, right? That was actually a publisher who joked around about that.
Yep.
But then Trump went on to say, no, it's quote, 2 of the biggest and most prestigious publishing houses have made very substantial offers, which I have rejected. Okay, there's a 0% chance of that. Okay, not because that they wouldn't make the offers, although they wouldn't, but because he wouldn't reject it. He went on to say, I love this part, but that doesn't mean I won't accept them sometime in the future. You loser, you're a loser. He's like, I don't want it, but I do, I really do. Please make an offer. He went on to say, as I've started writing the book,
if my book will be the biggest of them all, and with 39 books written or being written about me, does anybody really believe that they're above making a lot of money? Some of the biggest sleazebags on earth run these companies. Not really the best way to get a deal by calling them the biggest sleazebags.
Oh, the art of the deal.
The art of the deal. And then he said, last thing, he says, no morals, no nothing, just the bottom line. And they sure wouldn't admit it before the fact, but after the fact, they'll stand by and say, let's go. Okay, number one, if you just said that, then they're not gonna sign a deal with you and say, let's go, because you just called them sleazebags. And number two, projection. You're a sleazebag that'll do anything for money, so you assume others will. Well, they just proved to you that they won't. Okay, we got a great bonus episode for you guys. Guy gets eaten by a whale. What happens next? And dogs during the COVID thing. It's a tragic story.
Yeah. I was gonna maybe save that story for later. But okay.
All right. We'll do that anyway. Members, hit the join button below. tyt.com/join. Bonus episode coming up for you right now.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was Too Strong Coffee? Yes, new, TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great. So check it out right now at TooStrongCoffee.com/TYT.
300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day. We looked at you like, are you nuts?
Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 15 billion views.
Damn.
All right, lots of comments. You guys are the best.
I'm gonna read a few comments from our members.
Mr. Methuselah says on YouTube, super chat, thanks for all the important work you do for TYT for the movement.
Do you know who had the first super chat when I got back from vacation? You won't be surprised to find out. Rob Shively, what do you know? Rob says, rejoice, for Dragon Daddy has returned.
This question sent to us by Izzy Sanchez Jr. Is it me or is Meghan McCain talking as fast as Ben Shapiro? Is that the way the right tries to look smart and intellectual? Well, yes.
Michael Nathan writes it on Twitter. Did Anna choose Cenk's outfit today? I'm sure it wasn't Cenk himself. Man Bun Jenkins Skinny Jeans says, so now Anna has pointed out, okay, that's his handle.
T. Joyce, 1971, saying Donald Trump is good at pulling out of things, NAFTA, the Iran deal, NATO. It's just too bad Fred Trump didn't.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man. I can see the voice.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable, Senator Sanders. Welcome to Rebel Headquarters.
Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted.
Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going.
Are you our next stream star?
Oh my God, that's me?
Show us what you got with your Twitch pitch. All you need to do is put together a 2-minute audition video on why you should have your own stream on TYT, and then put it on Twitter and use the hashtag TwitchPitch. Plus, tag us at The Young Turks. And if you needed even more information than that, TYT.com/TwitchPitch has all the info you need. I can't wait to see your videos. Cool news, shoptyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! course, Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
Back on the bonus episode, I saw the last thing I heard before we came back, well, other than ice cream.
That was awesome.
What was that?
It was awesome. That's what that was.
Yeah. So, and Bart, so one of the members made a comment about your music when we were starting the show. Someone who likes Bernie Sanders wrote in, this music has some very, will Cenk be able to train hard enough to win the high school championship vibes to it.
Thank you very much.
And sorry about Pink Floyd, Bart. I know you love them, but it's okay. We love you anyway. Not you, but well, anyway. So I know the last words I heard was American Dream, and it reminded me of my dad going, "Why you don't plug my book on the show?" Original Young Turk. You want to talk about American Dream? Okay, my dad lived the American Dream. It's on shoptyt.com. Go nuts.
Dude, let me just say.
Oh, for Father's Day, come on.
So you had talked a little bit, well, you never said anything, you never elaborated, but you had like mentioned while plugging your father's book that he experienced like some torture in his, like literal torture in his life. And I was like, oh, you're just gonna throw that out there, but not elaborate.
Yeah.
You elaborated a little bit on the Old School episode yesterday, which I didn't even realize how much I needed Old School yesterday. Cause like yesterday was such a, like it was a hard day, right? Like I couldn't eat all day, I felt disgusted. Like even when I got home and the whole like work day was over and I felt like maybe I can relax now, I was on edge, wasn't feeling good. And finally, like I tell Christian, I'm gonna go for a walk. And walks always help, but Waz had texted me and we were texting back and forth and he's like, sorry, I'm taking a while to get back to you. I'm doing Old School. And I was like, oh my God, it's Old School and I'm on a walk.
You're on a walk.
I'm on a walk. And I love, like, Old School got me out of that totally negative, toxic headspace. And it was so nice. Like, I love that show.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
it was fun. Yeah, talking about torture on Old School gets you in a great piece of mind.
I mean, that was such a small part of it. But like, it's funny because what you guys don't, well, maybe you do know. Whenever I am watching Old School live, which is most of the time, I'm like this I'm not the EP of that show. I have nothing to do with the production of that show. Asher is the producer and does a great job.
Yeah, but we don't produce anything.
I know, but still, doesn't matter. But I'm like obsessively like texting Cenk throughout, like say this. No, get off it. Don't talk about that. Like fun. We want to have fun. It's like ridiculous.
Well, look, you know, #boss. There's nothing you could do about it. It's just in our nature. So now I wanted to read one other comment for you guys. And no, I am not going to tell you about the Syrian torture story. Read the book, Original Young Turk, shoptyt.com. So by the way, I want to thank all these people. Auto Buddha just joined, AB, Kevin Jones, Nashimi Inks, Lin, Jennifer Higgins, all just joined. They hit the join button below. It's okay, this is a bonus episode. You're all members already. I just wanted to thank them. No More Pod For You writes in on YouTube Super Chat. This is, I guess, his version of Old School from last night, for like Anna did. Anyway, he writes in, I need a beta bumper. Just teared up. Beta, I'm dead.
Beta! Beta, man!
You are beta male. Okay, so when we were talking about that bumper, which by the way, our very own Brett Ehrlich made. I think it was the two of us, Jake, in the production meeting, like talking about it. We're like, yeah, it should be, it should be a play off the Venga bus.
Yeah.
And all these youngsters on our team, right? I think Ashwarya was one of them. We're like, what's the Venga bus?
Oh my God.
So maybe I am past my prime. I don't know.
Look, it's possible that the bus came and left.
Maybe.
So we were warned for years and years that it was coming.
It came, it went. We didn't even realize it.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. By the way, I can't stop myself from dancing every time I hear that song.
Oh, totally. Are you kidding me? It's right here. It's on my iTunes.
Sometimes I listen to it when I'm running and I run faster.
Oh, that's so funny. I listen to it when I'm high and I'm like, I'm sure it's about to come. It's because it's coming. They keep telling me. No, it's hard not to bob your head to that song.
I know. And everybody's jumping. New York to San Francisco. Disco. All right. You want to talk about whales?
Let's do whales.
The story's insane, right? But this is, I would want to experience this. Okay, so yeah, why not? Okay, so a man was swallowed by a humpback whale in the waters off of Cape Cod. Now, this gentleman has survived the incident, and I would argue this is a fascinating thing to have experienced. Let me give you the details. So it happened a little before 8 a.m. on Friday of last week. So there was a veteran lobster diver by the name of Michael Packard. He entered the water for his second dive of the day. And he dove down and saw schools of fish swimming, and then before he knew it, in something truly biblical, Packard was swallowed whole by a humpback whale. And he lived to tell the story. That's the amazing part. Okay, he says, I got down to about 45 feet of water, and all of a sudden, I just felt this huge bump and everything went dark. And I could sense that I was moving and I was like, oh my God, did I just get hit by a shark? Then I felt around and I realized there was no teeth and I had felt really no great pain. And then I realized, oh my God, I'm in a whale's mouth. I'm in a whale's mouth and he's trying to swallow me.
Okay, the most amazing part of the story is that Packard's first name is Geppetto. Not true, but so they mentioned the story over and over again. Like, this never happens, okay? Like,
humpback whales are not like, they're not looking to eat humans.
No, and so they don't even have teeth. So they filter in fish in a way that I'm not going to be able to describe.
They have like think of their teeth almost like a toothbrush, right? I forget what it's called. It's like bristly. Right?
That's why I couldn't describe it either.
And it's so they can, so they like take water that has plankton in it, and that's what they eat. They eat the plankton in the water.
So they say that he probably would not even been able to fit down the throat of the whale, right? And that's why he was in his mouth, and that's why. And he originally thought he was in a shark, great white shark, but he's like, where's the teeth? Because it doesn't exist, because it turns out it's a whale. And so then he lit a campfire underneath it inside the whale, and then the whale spit him out. No, that's Pinocchio and Geppetto. Okay.
So Brett's watching. It's baleen. Baleen, yeah, baleen. Baleen whales. Baleen whales don't have teeth. They have like the bristly,
the bristly thing.
It's like eat the plankton and then get the water out.
Yeah. No, seriously, the only other two times that anybody's ever heard of it, that's why I keep making the Geppetto joke, is in Pinocchio, his father gets swallowed by a whale, Pinocchio goes in, lights a fire, campfire, the whale sneezes them out. And then in of course, in the Bible, Jonah gets swallowed by a whale. He stays in there for 3 days, so it's apparently pretty comfy, and then the God orders the whale to vomit him out.
I don't know. Space,
yeah. What's that?
A lot of space.
Yeah.
Whales are big, they're very big.
That's true, very large.
Yeah.
Anyways, in this case, when he realized that he was inside something, he started wiggling around, and then he could see the light when the whale came up to the surface, And that's when he started moving around more because he's in scuba gear.
Yeah.
And then that's when the whale's like, oh, I got something stuck in my, she jumped at me. That was what I was like. Okay, boss, hold on. Anyway, basically that's when the whale spits him out.
Yeah,
and he's okay.
yeah. So he says about that part of this whole debacle, all of a sudden he went to the surface and just erupted and started shaking his head. I just got thrown in the air and landed in the water and I was free and I just floated there. So he was then rushed to the hospital. He's totally fine. In fact, the Center for Coastal Studies has this guy named Juke Robbins who says, based on what was described, this would have to be a mistake and an accident on the part of the humpback because, as we explained earlier, they're not looking to eat humans. They're not targeting them in any way. This was in fact an accident by the humpback. And here's Packard in the hospital, looking well. You know.
Oh, by the way, this Packard guy's lived an amazing life. So he's been involved in lobster diving. Apparently, is very, very dangerous.
Obviously,
and they go and grab the lobster from the bottom of the ocean, and so it's very cold. That's one of the hazards. But he's lost friends to sharks before. So that's a very real danger. And then he survived a helicopter crash where the pilot and the co-pilot died. This guy's got like 9 lives. You read the story, it's like one unbelievable horror story after another. And then he gets eaten and spit out by a whale. And you saw his picture, he's like, for Packard, it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
He's fine.
It is pretty incredible.
In his neck of the woods in Cape Cod, apparently he is the last lobster diver.
Really?
Yeah.
I think he should write a book. I think that'd be a fascinating book. I mean, he's been inside a whale. That alone, that should be like the final chapter, right? Like tease him, and then.
Yeah, I mean, when I read all the amazing stories, since he does a very dangerous job, it's certainly possible, and he goes to remote areas and stuff. But I did think for a second, like, are these like tall tales? Because that is a hell of a lot of things to go through for one guy.
No, Jake,
it's a whale of a story. I mean,
don't project our cushy lifestyle in a studio to what other people do for a living, right?
I hear you, but it's a little fishy.
The whale of a dork, right there. Oh, and then dork. Dork is it is, right? Yeah, penis. Dork is a whale's penis.
I did not know
genitalia. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, not in that context.
Yeah.
Okay, you learn something new every day. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think we can move on, right?
Yeah, I'll tell the cute daughter story. It fits perfectly that I promised you guys earlier. I think I did. My 8-year-old daughter is caught on to what dad jokes are. And since she knows now what dad jokes are and she knows that they're supposed to be bad, just yesterday she's laughing at those same jokes. But now she thinks it's cool not to laugh at them.
Oh, she gets it.
Yeah.
She's gonna be homecoming queen.
She is. I don't know, but
she knows how to be popular.
So in the car today, I tell a joke and she's like, first she suppresses a laugh, like, and then she goes, Baba, I know that's a dad joke. Okay. And I'm like, okay, so what? It was funny, right? She's like, no, I heard dad jokes aren't funny.
Okay, hold. How did she learn about dad jokes?
We're probably through her friends. So she's hanging out with her friends a lot. They came over the other day and stuff. Yeah.
She's got friends now.
Oh, they got friends. They got friends. That's what happens. They grow up. Are you kidding me? Pro's 10. He's got hair up and down his legs.
No.
He's got a little bit of a mustache.
No.
He almost has to police that mustache.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy how quickly kids grow. Like, anyone who has children in this company, obviously since I've been here since 2007, I was around when the kids were born. So I've seen them grow up and it blows my mind. Like, I remember your 40th birthday. Wendy was pregnant at that time with Pro, and I feel like that was yesterday. How long ago was that? 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Yep. Just blows my mind.
A little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, 11 years ago. Okay.
When when I did the first Young Turks show by myself, it was actually in December of 2001. So I was 31 years old.
Whoa.
Wow. Okay. So, and by the way, for all the people trying to knock us down, we're still here, brothers and sisters. Still here.
Well, yeah. I like to think of TYT as the Turkish man who got literally run over by a truck, a big rig truck. It was a story we did years and years ago. And he just like stood up and was totally fine. He got run over. It was a real story. He got run over by a big rig truck. Is he real?
He saw that Packard story and he's like, wimp.
Yeah, totally. All right, so I wanted to just quickly discuss a term I learned over the weekend. It's something that I think a lot of people can relate to, but maybe you don't know about the correct term in describing it. It's known as the Sunday Scaries. Do you know what the Sunday Scaries are? Edwin, I'm sure you know because you know everything. Don't jump in. You're not allowed to.
Yeah, he looked like he didn't know. That was my read on your face for a millisecond when I saw it. Anyways, yeah, of course, Edwin and Craig know everything. At the end of yesterday's show, Craig's like telling me 8 things I didn't know. I was like, okay, well. Anyways, so I've heard of it, but no, funny enough, I don't know what they are, no.
Okay, Sunday Scaries, and obviously this applies to people who work Monday through Friday. It's when the weekend's coming to an end and you start feeling a lot of anxiety about the upcoming week, about starting your work week. And I don't relate to that anymore because I've been here for approximately 150 years.
Right.
But I remember that, during the early years of TYT, especially when I was the guest booker, right? That was my first real role at TYT. And so I can't even believe I pulled this off, but TYT used to have 3 guests on the show every day. And I had to book 3 guests every single day. And I want to give myself credit because I knocked it out of the park. I did a really good job.
Not a big deal though.
Not a big deal.
Not a big deal. She's not trying to tell you, she's just saying.
Yeah.
These are facts.
The show was also like 3 hours long, which isn't too different from what we're doing now when you think about it, right? With the post game. In a sense,
yeah. And back then we had more commercials. We had lots and lots of commercials because of radio.
Yeah.
Because we were on radio. But yeah, no, kidding aside, no, yeah, it's not easy booking 3 guests. And we used to have a lot of guests, good guests. We had Congress people on. We had, some of the top journalists on.
Eleanor Clift.
Okay.
She was a reg.
She was a reg.
Yep.
Okay. Michael Isikoff, Howard Feynman, and
Mark Rosenball.
Yeah, Mark Rosenball was a great reporter. So was Isikoff. Lots of great reporters we used to have on.
Yeah, I was the one who booked Lou Dobbs.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, and I also booked Jimmy Carter.
Oh, right? Look at this.
I know I'm bragging about myself. Anyway, but putting that aside, I used to, on Sunday nights, even if I had like the guest booked for Monday, like just feel this like, I don't know, this feeling in the pit of my stomach. It was anxiety because it's like, and I don't feel that anymore, but now Christian's feeling it because he's in corporate America. He's working for a mortgage company. And so he was talking about what he was feeling, the anxiety and all of that. And we were having dinner with good friends of ours. And one of them said, oh, you got the Sunday Scaries. And instantly I loved it. It's the best.
Yeah, no, I used to have that when I was a student. So because now folks here know me as a guy who can't stop working and etc. But back then I used to be lazy in just such a wonderful way. I'll tell you a quick story about that. So I'm watching the Bills versus the Oilers back then.
The Oilers.
Yeah, the Houston Oilers. And it's a playoff game. And in its first year of law school, and at Columbia, they do this awful thing where they have the finals at the end of Christmas break, thereby stressing you out the entire Christmas break, right? And so I'm at home and I'm supposed to be studying, and the Oilers build up this monstrous lead. I forget it now. It was 35-0, whatever it was, right? And so I'm thinking the whole time, I got to turn it off. It's halftime. Of course, they're not going to come back. It's over. Say, I got to study. Torts. I need to do torts, right? And civil procedure, right? And I was like, I don't want to turn it off. Let me just watch the first 5 minutes. And that, of course, for football fans, that was probably the greatest comeback in football history. Okay, the Bills storm back with Frank Reich, and they win the game. And I remember thinking, yes, laziness pays off, right?
Does it though?
Yeah, it kind of, yes, actually it did. And so now you're bragging, I'll be unbearable, okay? So I watched it, I felt amazing that I had not studied and that I watched this historic game instead. I was so happy about that. And then of course, then it turned out I didn't study the whole break, okay? And so I go back on I forget if it was the last day or the second to last day before the break, because I had forgotten my books in New York. I had gone to my parents' house in New Jersey. So I didn't have at least some of the books. I had some of the books at home and some of them were at home. And it turns out when I got there, I had the wrong test. I was studying, what tiny little bit I studied with the book that I did have was for a test that was later and not the next day, okay? So I'm in a cold sweat panic. And no, it must not have been the last day that I went. I must have gone twice because I must have gone like 2 days before or something to pick up the extra books. And then and everybody was already there because I remember being surprised. If it was the last day, I wouldn't be surprised, right? And I'm like, hey, I forget everybody's names. Bob, why is everybody here? He's like, Cenk, you're the only one who left. Everyone's been here the entire Christmas break studying. Okay, and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh no, this is a problem. You want to talk about Sunday scaries?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, that was a nuclear case of the Sunday scaries.
Right.
And so then I go to one of my roommates, Jamie, I remember his name, although I think he changed it. It was weird, several people at my law school changed their names. I don't know why.
It's weird that you didn't.
I know, right? There's one Palestinian kid, and he had an Arab name. I don't want to give it away because I guess he doesn't want it out there. And then he turned it into like Paul Allen. It's like, okay, Paul.
Well, there is a lot of racism and xenophobia in this country.
But to be fair, that's right. No, that's right. And he was probably worried about getting a job and stuff like that. Anyways, so I say, Jamie, I don't have any notes in that class because that's another thing in law school. Everybody takes notes like boss.
For sure, I would argue the notes and listening to the lectures is way better than like having your nose in a textbook all the time. But anyway, keep going.
I used to bring the USA Today and do my fantasy football scores.
Oh my God, that's amazing. It's amazing.
So because I didn't want to be a lawyer, so I knew I was very unlikely to be a lawyer. So like law school was shits and giggles. Okay, I'd play basketball, I'd drink. And so I do a lot of thinking, okay. And so Jamie looks at this and he knows that I took the wrong books, I have the wrong test, right? And he thinks, this poor sumbitch. All right, fine, you can photocopy my notes because you can take the notes into the test, okay? But it's his notes for the whole year. How am I gonna thumb through it, know it and stuff? So he's like, all right, he showed mercy, which by the way, nobody else did. So bless his heart for that. So I wound up getting E's at Columbia Law are the equivalent of basically A pluses. I got straight A pluses. Okay, and only 5% of the class gets straight A pluses first semester. Like that's the big thing. That's what all the law firms recruit out of. They look for the guys who got the 3 E's.
Yeah.
All right.
So your friend takes great notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't have his notes for the other classes. Anyway, look. I had read most of the material that year, the first semester, which I almost never did. I was incredibly lazy in school, okay? And so since I had read like 80 to 90% of the material, I'm like, I've never been better prepared for a test in my life. Normally I'll read 10 to 50%. I used to read the first chapter, the last chapter, and a couple of details in the middle. And then you're gonna hate me for these stories. I'm unbearable. If it was an essay test, good night, Irene. Because I was gonna put a couple of like really minute details that I got from the middle of the book into the essay, so it looked like I knew all the minutia, okay? And so the professors were like, oh my, he knows that detail, this guy's really good. Meanwhile, I haven't read 80% of the book, Okay, so I'm just being honest about back in the day, okay? So Jamie was furious. He thought I was scamming him. He's like, you must have studied this whole time. You did this trick about going home when nobody else did. You did a trick about leaving the book. I'm like, Jamie, I didn't do any tricks. He's like, it's just not possible, right? And so he's like, you're never to touch my notes again.
That'll show you.
I'm like, I don't know, dude. I'm not even gonna. And then
So did he perform as well as you did, or a little?
Now that's the funny thing.
That's what this was, probably. Go ahead.
No. It turns out Jamie was one of the other kids who got straight A pluses.
Then he has no reason
I know,
to
but
be
that's
upset.
the thing. And so that's what you guys. That's part of part of my attitude in school was just because I was lazy. Let's keep it real, okay? But I would call it an efficiency expert. But part of it was because I didn't like especially at Columbia, I didn't like the culture. The culture was like, not only do I want to do well, but I want to do better than you, right?
Yeah, the same culture that our immigrant parents instilled in us, by the way.
No, it's definitely not the same. My parents never told us you should be better than others. They just told you should be the best. Okay.
I mean, okay.
No, there's a difference because. And at Columbia, the difference was palpable. It wasn't just that they wanted to do well, they wanted you to do badly.
Okay, yeah, that is different.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
You could feel it in the air.
Yeah,
there was a couple
that's pretty gross.
Yeah, there was a couple of great guys, and those are the guys I hung out with. And like I said, we played basketball and drank our way through law school. A couple of wonderful female colleagues, and some of them did wonderful things afterwards and stuff. But at least 80% of the school was so competitive that they felt like stepping on you was, was a net positive. Whereas, I don't know. I'm not saying it feels awkward, but I just don't view it that way. I just don't. Like I want to win. Don't get me wrong. I really, really want to win, but I feel bad when others lose.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get that. Yeah. I wish there was enough time in the day for me to go back to grad school and just redo my graduate degree, because I was too young and didn't know enough, and I didn't get enough out of it. I want to go.
That's the difference between you and me.
I want to go back and I want to engage in those debates. I was so young and didn't know enough and felt so scared to speak up in class. And now,
oh my God, that's
so much fun.
That's so funny that you were like that. All right, last couple of things because Wozniak's coming up. Just to finish up the stories. First of all, the whole part of the point. Let's keep it real. A huge part of it was a not so humble brag. But part of the point of telling you that I got the A pluses was it's a good thing I watched the game.
Yeah.
It turns out it didn't hurt at all. You see that? I mean, yeah, of course I got lucky, but still, I'm glad I did that. And in law school, last story is, I was the opposite of you, of course. Me being who I was from day one, in school at least. At home, I was quiet. Everything's.
Oh, totally.
Okay.
Totally.
And I'd have my hand up for a long period of time. I was such a dork, so annoying. I readily acknowledge it. And I remember first week, one of the women who were in the class with me were in line getting a snack together during a break, and she says, "Why do you feel the need to constantly make comments in class, right? Ask questions, make comments, all those things." And I said to her, "Oh, because I figured something out and I wanted you guys to know." And she,
classic Cenk. The Venga bus is coming and everybody's jumping.
Okay, the eye roll she gave me and that I richly deserved was epic. I mean, I still remember the eye roll. It was like, wah, 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 wah. And so, not that many people in law school were surprised to find out that I was doing a talk show where I figured things out and I wanted to share with you. All right, guys, much love. 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. Wozniak on twitch.tv/TYT. Woz is so much fun.
Yes.
You're gonna love that show, so make sure you check it out. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.